Good evening. Let's call ourselves to order. Meeting of the West Newbury Board of Selectmen, March 2nd, 2020, at 7:05. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable TV channels and on the internet. Just a brief correspondence from Paul Savigny, the town health agent, related to the coronavirus situation. In a joint meeting between public health, public safety, and the Board of Health, we'd like to keep you up to date with our efforts in preparing for the coronavirus. We'll be meeting within the next week to discuss the emergence of the new virus as a team. We'll continue to work closely with our state and local counterparts and update the selectmen as needed. In the meantime, residents should continue to practice the same precautions that are used to prevent the common cold or flu. For more information, the following websites can be reviewed: Mass Department of Public Health at mass.gov/2019 coronavirus, and the CDC prevention website at cdc.gov/corona/2019-NCOV. So that's signed jointly by Paul Savigny and Mike Dwyer. So basically follow what's going on with the CDC. Obviously, it's a very new situation. There's nothing that we can, any advice that we can give you that you can't get better from the CDC. Something you may notice in the next week, you're driving around town, bicycling around town perhaps, there are new signs on some of the stop signs, other trees or whatever. So there are new signs for the East Coast Greenway. So what that is, if people are feeling really ambitious, you can theoretically bike all the way from Maine to Key West. So it's very good. It goes through West Newbury. It's designed to go on roads with minimal or small amounts of traffic. So it's for biking on safe roads. So ultimately, it's not completed, but the plan is to get all the way to Florida from Maine, and so it's kind of nice. It goes through West Newbury, and we just got the signs up this week. Okay. There's a picture here, but you really can't. It doesn't do well in black and white. So. Tomorrow is voting day, obviously the final day for the presidential primary, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. There is a planning board public hearing, I forgot this one, on March 4th, which would be Wednesday at 7:15. So the planning board has to do a public hearing on any changes to the bylaws. And so that will take place Wednesday evening. The Massachusetts Municipal Association is sponsoring legislative breakfast this March 13th in Manchester by the Sea. That's for local elected officials, mostly for, in this case, for I believe for selectmen. We can meet with legislators in the area to discuss concerns that you might want to bring to the legislative leadership. So anything that people feel would be best addressed by the legislature, it could be, if you contact one of us, we could forward it to the legislative leadership at these meetings. Announcement of the tree committee is getting active. It's going to be some events around Arbor Day. Fred, you want to tell us? You can do it better than I can. Tell us what you're going to do. Make it green.
Make it green.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's good, yeah.
We are in the final planning stages and really in the sort of preparatory stages of having a community-wide event on April 25th, Saturday. Last time it was really...
No, you want to be closer to it, Fred.
That it was going to had a lot of feedback, so I'm moving it away.
Okay.
I trust you, but...
You trust her
She
more, that's
rules.
fine, right.
And so that's a community-wide event that'll be held at the library and on the library grounds. There'll be tree seedlings that are given away for free. There'll be information from arborists. There'll be exhibits in the library, and it should be a lot of fun. We are also asking the high schoolers we have a poster contest as part of our advertisement program. So all I would say is for the residents to look at email blasts that come through, read the newspaper articles, go to our website and find out more information.
That's great. And again, so everyone knows that'll be the 24th and 25th.
It turns out not the 24th. There will be library exhibits all week, but the activities are really centered around Saturday,
okay.
the 25th.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's still time for people that want to take out nomination papers for the town elections. The deadline to request papers is March 11th, and still some openings for committee appointments, which you can see on the West Newbury website. Anything either of you guys have to, any announcements?
No.
Okay. First item business is...
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were done with announcements. Can I make just one quick announcement?
Sure. Jen, use the mic.
Well, I'll go over here. Thank you. On behalf of the Pawtucket Arts Foundation, I just want to announce that our biannual Senior Citizen Matinee is happening this Wednesday at 3 o'clock at the Pawtucket High School Theater Auditorium, and the show is The Wiz. It's a complimentary event we offer twice a year to our seniors as a way to thank them for being part of the Tri-Town region and the contributions they make. They get to see a free theatrical show and get some nice refreshments, and there's a fun raffle.
That's great.
Thank you.
Jen, do you know if there's any kind of transportation to that or anything?
Some of the places send the vans,
Okay,
yeah.
The senior
Yes.
centers do.
Yeah.
okay. First item is just a brief discussion of the FY21 Veteran Services budget. Karen Tyler?
Yes. Hi.
Thank you for coming in again.
Yes, no, I appreciate this opportunity to talk about veteran services, so I like to...
I think it's a good informational situation, yeah.
Exactly. So it's a great opportunity to let you guys, because you guys don't always get to see my face, to let you know what's going on with the district, what's going on with West Newbury, that type of thing. So there's kind of two things that West Newbury looks at. One is the administrative budget, which there's an assessment, so you guys are 7.8% of the overall administrative budget. So that's the one thing, all right?
If we have questions, do we keep them to the end?
No, you can ask whenever.
What generally do we, what can our veterans in West Newbury, what do they get for that 7% of administrative budget?
Oh, okay, so that's what I'm going to explain.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so, and then we have the Chapter 115. So Massachusetts, a veteran service officer for every city and town. Since we're small, we created a district. And the Chapter 115 is a local benefit through West Newbury, so it's for low-income veterans and surviving spouses. And in order to qualify for a single person, they would need less than $5,000 in the bank and have a monthly income of less than $2,081. So you can see that's a really low threshold, and so the people who are on it are very, are in that need. And so West Newbury pays 100% of that, and then the state reimburses the town at 75%. And so you currently, and one of the things, I passed my exam, so there's a certification exam. And because I passed it, you're eligible for the full 75%. If I did not pass my test, then the state would knock it down to 50%, so.
Well,
So what
why,
kind of
yeah, why
service-
is that?
What's,
Why is that? Because the state has to authorize all in order to,
I think I understand the answer. Okay. You got
sorry,
it.
if I don't explain it, but.
Yeah, you better explain it.
Okay, so to explain, okay. So everything that we do, so when somebody qualifies for Chapter 115, we have to submit it to the state, and the state has to approve it. So there's 13 documents that are required. And the software, is the database that we use is the state database. So if we don't do it, if we don't enter it correctly, or we don't have all the documents that are required, or for any other reason, the state could say, we'll only do at 75%. By taking this exam, it's showing that we know how to do it, and that we're putting our best foot forward, and there's accountability there, is basically what the point was, is to hold the VSOs accountable for what they do for the town and for the state.
so what kind of services would a veteran that qualifies, what kind of services would this get them?
So it's a financial benefit, so it comes in 3 categories. There's a financial supplement, there's medical, and also fuel. So you can qualify for one or qualify for all 3.
Oh, so there could be fuel assistance, okay,
That's correct, and they could still use action and stuff like that.
okay.
But in addition to, and so the other thing too is that, I also look for alternate ways for people to receive benefits. And so one of them is Mass Health now has a buy-in program that will pay, so the state will pay for Medicare for the person that you guys have on Chapter 115. So now instead of the town paying that Medicare cost, because we had the person apply for this program, now the state will pay for it. And so that way, you guys, the town is not involved and doesn't have to pay that 100% up front. Now the state's gonna pay it full. So looking at different programs like that is what we do to, lower the cost, and so we make sure that the people still get the maximum benefit. But Chapter 115 is always, the bottom. We always try to go federal, state, and then local.
Okay.
How many people are able to take advantage of the benefits in West Newbury?
So West Newbury now has 1 person on it.
Yeah.
And that person does qualify for that benefit that I was just talking about. So that will also reduce the cost to the town. One of the things that I am doing now to increase outreach is I now have office hours down at the Council on Aging. So I do that once.
In this building?
Yep.
That's
And,
good.
yeah.
That was going to be my question, what kind of outreach? Because there could be people that don't even realize there are these benefits and that are struggling.
Exactly, yep. So that's one of the things that I'm doing for outreach, and also I do home visits. And so anytime that there is a resident that needs assistance, I have, I do come out to West Newbury for home visits. In addition to the Chapter 115 benefits, I also help with VA federal claims. And so
It's a symphony of car horns going on out there now.
Wow.
One got jealous and started with the others.
So for West Newbury, so the federal claims is big. So West Newbury currently has 37 people on federal benefits. So for service-connected disability cases, we have 35 veterans, totaling of $423,000 a year. So spousal benefits is $11,016.
That's three?
Huh?
Is that three people or two?
2 people.
Okay.
And so for VA benefits, it coming into the town, you know, for the residents, tax-free, is $458,500.
Federal money.
That's correct. Yep. And so for per person, per month is about a little over $1,000. So with the training, because I go to a lot of training, so you can imagine, so the impact that has on a person, whether or not their claim is done correctly and whether or not it does get approved, can make the difference of over $12,000 for an individual. So it's
Annually?
yes. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah.
How long does the process take?
I try not to predict the VA timeline. It could take,
Worst, best type of thing?
so,
Months, more than years?
no, it takes months. On the low end, maybe like 3 or 4 months. Then it could be up to, 9, 10 months.
Okay.
So, and then if there's any appeals and things like that. So we also launched our new website, which we connected with the West Newbury, with your town website. So on mine, if you guys ever, have an opportunity or whatnot, go to the Eastern Essex website. And so we have up in the corner, all the towns that we service. And so we have West Newbury there. And so when you're on my site and you click on West Newbury, it brings us to your homepage. So that way we can connect the two. So that way we're always working together.
What other towns are involved in the Eastern Essex District?
Okay, so Ipswich is where the office is, and now I'm doing office hours in each of the towns. That was one of the things that's important to me. And we have Essex, Hamilton, Wenham, Ipswich, Newbury, West Newbury, Georgetown, and Raleigh. So, another thing, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I just wanted to point out, so this was posted on Facebook regarding a resident. So David Martin, his name was left off of the Vietnam memorial, and so that was his name was added to the memorial, and so it was very nice that he thanked, and Bob James is
Our rep.
West Newbury.
Is our rep.
Yep. And so he put out a nice thanks to me and Bob in the town for, having that person's name added to the memorial. So that was much appreciated. Well, in final closing, I guess, in addition, so I help veterans, homeless veterans, and with other benefits and stuff too. But when I found out that there was a homeless person living in West Newbury, I was able to, because of my experience of working with homelessness, I was able to connect that person with services. And so it's kind of a social services program, that we are and what we provide. And so I was thankful that my experience in helping other homeless people, that I was able to get this person into a program and get some help that they needed.
When was this done?
So this was just recently. It's been in the past month.
Oh, very recently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So, do you guys have any questions for me?
No. Would you mind, could I have that flyer or something that was on Facebook? It wasn't in our packet. I just would like to see.
Oh, okay.
Would you mind, or is that a copy,
I
or?
don't know if that's like a problem, because it was on Facebook, so I don't know if that
I'm
like,
done.
makes it.
I don't need it. I don't need it.
Okay.
I'll find it.
Okay.
I'll find it.
Because I was like, because that's what I was thinking, and then I'm like.
I'll
I
find it
don't
tomorrow
know.
morning where I'm liking all my college and high school friends' happy birthday.
Okay.
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 Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
One thing, just briefly for the board, Karen and I have talked about the potential opportunity that once the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Building is restored, that could be a great location for office hours. Obviously, we only want to do that if if there's enough foot traffic there. We want obviously this to be as visible and prominent as possible, so that's an advantage of having it here at the senior center, but I just wanted to say that is something we've taken on as an idea.
Yeah, then that might be an appropriate, if it fit in every other way, that would be kind of an appropriate place to do it, seeing as the building was originally built
Yeah.
in honor of
Cool.
veterans, yeah. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now we have Glenn's favorite item.
Yeah, I thought this wasn't coming up this year.
Is that right?
I thought.
We have a request from the West Newbury Garden Club to allow installation of the annual plants sale banner on the training field. The training field is one of the places that we actually like to keep uncluttered, to not use for signage of any event, no matter how well-meaning it is. But the garden club they use that area for their sale, and we've sort of kept it around as, because the grandfather, that permission for that to happen in the past, so I'll need where it is.
Anybody here from the garden club?
I would make a motion to approve this.
I'd second.
Discussion.
Well, I'm going to have my discussion that I have every single year, that when I was on the Board of Selectmen, we made a policy that we would not put any more signs on the training field, and that was a request of the people that live on the training field. And then now we've broken that policy with subsequent boards, and I don't have a problem with the policy as long as we open it up to all the groups and all the activities in West Newbury, and would have the same advantage of coming before us, and we would say yes or no. But we don't do that. We only give this privilege to the garden club, which is a very worthy cause, and I'll be there again this year, helping set up tables with my wife and stuff like that. So it's nothing against the garden club. It's about not having the same opportunity bestowed upon all the other groups in town and only giving this to the garden club. So I'm going to vote no for that, not because of it's the garden club.
And I will give Glenn credit, he's always consistent in what he says. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
We have a request for appointment of Tom Craig to the Energy Advisory Committee.
And Tom's right here, if you like.
Tom, you want to come up for just a second?
How you doing tonight?
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine.
Great. We just want to say hello, that's all. We like everyone that's a new committee member, so we see the name and a face, put them together and that kind of thing, so.
Okay. I recently retired. I have time to do this. My wife served on this board previously.
Oh, okay.
I know Rick from my wife Ann and Rick working together.
Great,
So I know a little bit about it and I'd like to do it. I'm
okay.
a retired mechanical engineer.
What is the term on this? Is it just 1 year, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's just.
I would end it in
we-
June, and then we can maybe, since now we finally have some people, and it looks like somebody else wants to be on the
Yep.
cable advisory, then we can retune it.
No, it's not cable advisory.
Oh.
Energy.
Oh,
advisory.
energy.
Yeah.
The next,
Oh.
as well as cable advisory.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
okay.
I would do it till June, and then we can.
Yeah, no,
revamp
I mean, that's
everything.
historically what we've done, is just a one-year appointment
They
for all
all,
of
no
us.
matter if we did it for 3 years or 2 years or whatever, they all end
June
June 15th.
Okay.
So it's better just to do it till June 15th, and then we can realign when it's, that's when we make all the appointments. So somebody want to make the
I
motion?
make a motion to appoint Thomas Craig to the Energy Advisory Committee with appointment ending June 15th, 2020.
Second. Got thirded, too.
Further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.
Oh, but you need to get,
Sworn in.
you need to get sworn in and take an ethics
Okay.
test somewhere. And Mike McCarron is going to be really busy tomorrow with voting, so he's not going to.
Tomorrow during the day?
Can you do it now? Because you have a couple of things going on tomorrow with voting, right?
Yeah.
And if they have a meeting,
I'm a little busy.
if they have a meeting tomorrow night, because if he doesn't swear you in, you can't be a voting member.
Next one is Kevin Bowe is desirous of an appointment to the Cable Advisory Committee. I don't see.
Kevin's not here. He was on before, but then took a hiatus because of work, but I would definitely recommend him, so I'd make a motion that we put Kevin Bowe on the Cable Advisory Committee with his term ending on 2020, June 15th of 2020.
Second. Further discussion? Favor?
Aye.
Aye. To your question about this before, we should have a conversation. I got some information. You talked to me
Oh,
about.
about the equipment, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
I just remembered when I saw that.
There is a vacancy on the Park and Rec Commission, and discussing this with Angus. I felt that, because it's we still have two people on the committee. Tom Flaherty just recently resigned, but we still have two active members that are there, and because, so there will be actually two vacant seats, but there are more than two people that have taken out nomination papers for the position.
You already been
I felt it
nominated.
was giving
Yeah.
an incumbent too much of an advantage, since they, for only, basically, they're only gonna be in there for 2 months. So
Yeah,
my feeling was
I would agree.
to not pick one person and disadvantage the other people that are going to run for it. If it was gonna be a whole year, yes, but it's only a couple of months. So that was a
I would definitely agree.
executive decision.
Thank you for that.
Is that reasonable, Rick? or-
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I agree with that completely.
Because then if we start, quite honestly, if we start picking,
Pick winners and losers.
yeah, and then that person becomes somebody on the board, and they could be running against somebody else, and who we pick, so I don't think it's fair.
Yeah, no, it's not fair to be running as an
Then you're the,
incumbent. with
yeah,
only-
then you're
with
all of a
only
sudden,
2
you're
months
the
to go. You
incumbent.
always have an advantage as an incumbent, so it
Yep.
doesn't make advantage.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Angus, could you clarify something? I'm a little confused when I look at the, I don't know if Mike made this up or if you made it up, the Parks and Rec on the packets of information we got. And the way it's laid out, it says for 3 years, for 1 year. So it looks like there are two people who have taken, no, Bill Backrack is the incumbent, and just one person has taken out papers for the 3-year position, and 4 for the 1 year? I'm confused.
That's correct.
That's what it looks like.
Okay,
That's
okay.
correct. Yeah, 2 people for the 3-year, including Bill.
Oh, I thought
But
Bill,
Bill's not
elsewhere,
gonna
I thought
run.
Bill wasn't running. I thought,
He's
yeah.
told us since then that he's not.
Oh, I see, okay,
But he
all right.
did take out papers.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And then John Birch appears on both because he's got papers.
Yeah, okay, okay, thanks.
So what happens if he won both? I guess he doesn't. He has to sit in 2 chairs at the same
Now,
time.
there'd be
Then there'd be another appointment.
then there'd need to be.
The
an
second
extra
place
appointment.
person, or,
Huh?
I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get
Yeah.
I did notify the one candidate who submitted. I did let him know that this was the recommendation that Chairman Archibald was going to make, and he totally understood, had no concern about that as well.
Okay.
Next item is the Library trustees have requested a discussion of the proposed FY '21 library budget. Who wants to come up?
Items for you to take a look at too.
Is this new from what we have?
I believe, yes. I think you have one of the things that's in
Great,
here.
thank you.
And I'll try not to take up too much of your time with this.
Do you have one for me?
Oh, sorry.
Are we going through this, or do you need for us to read this before you start talking?
I can walk you through it.
Okay.
So thank you for including us on the agenda. So when I think of staffing in libraries, I think of three things. One is safety, two is quality of service, and three is our ability to participate on a consortium level. And right now, we are operating where we are mostly safe, and the quality of service can be a challenge, and we very often have to miss our consortium meetings, and a lot happens in those meetings. We're a small library, and we're part of a 36-member consortium, and when we don't represent ourselves at those meetings, things happen that may not otherwise, and we also miss out on really important information.
Adversely happens? Things adversely happen to
Decisions are made at those meetings. It's really a collective decision-making process. So if you're not representing your library, or if all of the larger libraries are represented, but the smaller ones aren't, who have different needs, then decisions
Okay.
do get skewed.
And when you say we as the town and the library, or we as multiple individuals go to those meetings?
Multiple, so there's certain staff, and there's a team meeting, a children's meeting, there's a reference group meeting, so different people in the library would attend different meetings
On the same day?
on different days. All the meetings, some of them are quarterly, some of them are monthly, it depends on the meeting. But for instance, since I started in July, there have been 20 meetings that would have been appropriate for our staff to attend, and we were only able to attend 6 of those.
How many meetings do they have a year? If you've already had 20, when do they have time to be in the library?
They have quite a few, but there's a lot to discuss,
And they're all during the day?
they're all during the day. So that means that someone has to leave the building and go to North Andover or wherever the meeting's held and then come back. So the first page here, we're just talking about how many people come in and out of the building on a daily basis. This library is a pretty busy library for the size of it, and additionally, the quality of service of this library is, it's excellent. We've seen a 30% increase in attendance at programs in the last 7 months, and one of the goals of our strategic plan is to increase programming. With increased programming means increased staffing. If we have a program at night, normally we have 2 people on that night, we would have to have a third person to be in charge of the program. So it shifts things a little staff-wise. There's just a list here of all of the different things that people have to do. I think a lot of times people think, you're just checking things and checking in and checking out. And in most libraries, there's something called desk time, and then there's something called off-desk time. And during off-desk time, that's when you do collection development, you plan your programs, you take care of invoices, you do all of the administrative business, which takes up quite a bit of time. And when you're on desk time, it means you're at the circulation desk and you're handling the flow of people coming in and out of the building. In this library, no one has off-desk time. Everyone is scheduled to do both parts of their job simultaneously, which in a really busy library is very challenging, to be able to focus enough to perform collection development, to create contracts with programs. It's difficult to do that when you also have to get up and help someone at the circulation desk at the same time. And additionally, when someone is absent because of illness or vacation, someone has to take their place, and there's nowhere in the budget that accounts for that. I can't. If someone has 5 weeks of vacation for the year, they're eligible to take it, and I can't ask them to not take it, but I have to find someone to cover their shifts. And if I can't cover their shifts, I have 2 choices. I can work a 12-hour day, or I can come in the morning, leave for a little while, and then come back at night, or ask someone else to do that. Or I can close the building, which is the very last thing anyone in the building wants to do. All of these women that work at this library are so devoted, and they will, cancel plans, come back to work after having been there already for many hours just to keep the building open.
So I just want to emphasize that unlike a regular office, if somebody takes vacation, their work will wait or somebody can cover a little bit. In a library, we need minimum staffing, we need to have safety being foremost. We need to, staff needs to make sure that there's supervision in all parts of the building. Children are there, computers are being used by children, by adults. There's all sorts of things that librarians need to keep an eye out for. And if you're doing a program, which by the way was something that the town requested in our strategic plan and the survey, there's a sudden influx of people, that person is tied up with that program, somebody else needs to cover. So there's a minimum number of bodies that need to be at the library, and therefore that's why if somebody's on vacation or sick, it's not like we can just say, oh, that's fine. When it gets down to a certain number of people, you need to pull extra people, ask them to come in and work extra hours, which happens.
Is this a problem that's worsening, or has this been the same for 8 years, or what would you say?
I think the building was understaffed for many years, and the director before me, she estimated that it was about a 40-hour deficit. She got 20 hours added on over the time that she was the director. That leaves us still another 20 short. So it is an ongoing problem, and what alerted me to it is as I've been going through my budget and noting how much extra money I'm paying people to work these extra hours, I was concerned that this was my problem. And so I looked back at last fiscal year to see how did this work, were people working this many extra hours, and sure enough, I'm right on track to be right where she was. And there was a little bit of flexibility in the budget this year and last because of staff turnover and a difference in pay, but next year there won't be any. So that means, if there's no extra money to call in someone to cover for an evening shift, and I don't have money to pay, I will have to close the building. And people use that building all day long. It would be very disappointing, I think, for the community to have to shorten our hours.
Has it always been 3 staff people there at a time, or?
It's not three at a time. It depends on the time of day. So in the evenings, we usually have 2 people on unless there's a program, then we'll have a third. But during the busier times of the day, there are certain times when a large influx of kids comes in at once, or and it's kind of predictable. So we try to have between 3 and 4 on, depending on how many programs are happening and what we expect the building to be happening in the building rather. Sorry.
When you're saying staff, does that include you, or?
It does include me.
So it's not you, 2 others, and you say we have 3 staff on?
Yes, I'm included.
I know you're included, I didn't know if you were included with the staff. Something that stands out to me, both of you mentioned safety. So you're saying safety is being compromised now? Because you said, when you said it's mostly safe, so that means it's not safe. And then you mentioned, you said something, so obviously that's kind of something that we're concerned with, that we don't have a safe environment for our kids.
So just imagine, last week we had a program where 150 kids came. That's a ton of kids in that small building. When you have that many small children between the ages of, babies all the way up to 10, it's a really chaotic environment. And you need to make sure that everyone is looking everywhere, that, one kid escaped out of the fire escape and ran around the building. So you need eyes
That's why we have a constant struggle to make sure there's adequate staff, because we do not compromise, we don't want to compromise safety. But again,
Okay, I guess when you were talking about safety, I guess I had something else in mind, that the staff was worried, it was sort of feeling threatened or something, so it's not that,
No,
it's not that.
really patron
It's just a
safety.
lot of people
Yes,
around.
yeah.
Okay, I get
it's more
it.
like a school.
Yeah, I didn't think
Yeah.
that
Do
way.
you think
Okay,
we're-
okay.
Programs there, do you think we're overdoing it then? Do you think that
No.
we're putting kids in an unsafe environment? If we're putting 150 kids, I can't even imagine where 150 kids would be. I guess they would be in the children's room, and I know all those hook things move around and stuff like that. Do you think that we're setting ourselves up to fail with programs like that? Maybe we should scale them back. I hate to see that, or maybe have them in a different place.
No, I think that we knew that day we were going to have, a lot of kids in the building, and so we
Mhm.
staffed it accordingly. But I have the flexibility to do that because I have some money in my budget to do that right now, because there's a difference in pay between,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yep, I
so
understand.
If I can't do that in the future, then my concern is possibly.
And this is not typical, so we have about 150 people on average that come to the library per day. Now, of
Can you
course-
define that? Because that comes out to be like 44,000 people a year.
Yeah,
So-
and we have a counter. so
Mm,
this
But what does that
is-
mean? Like if somebody comes in to buy, just to drop off a book, they'll get counted. Somebody who comes in and spends an hour and then uses reads magazines, obviously they get counted. A mother comes in with an infant and 2 children that goes to that program, they get counted. Somebody comes in and forgets their book and then goes home and then comes back with their book. That was it. We're just trying, that seems unbelievable amount of, when it says 156 a day, that doesn't sound as bad. When you say 44,000 people, it just blew me away.
It's a lot of people. It's a really busy library, especially for a library this size.
Now, this is where I get, my second grade or 5th grade math. So, you're budgeted for 186 hours a week. Having 3 people on, and we're open for 51 hours a week, that's 153 hours to having 3 people on during your time that you're open. So in theory, we have a flexibility of 33 hours a week above the 3 people on.
Can you repeat? I'm not sure where you got your first number.
186 hours a week.
Are you just including the staff that's listed here?
No.
What are-
Angus, where did I get?
All staff.
All staff,
Okay. So
which
you said
which is including you. That's the reason why I asked the earlier question.
So we said 180 hours a week?
186 hours a week, and if we're open 50, we're open 51 hours a week, and if you want
Times 3 is 153.
153, and then we have a flexibility already to have more staff over 3 hours a time of 33 hours.
There's also sick time and PTO.
I understand.
vacation.
And additionally, I'm in the building, but I'm mostly in my office doing administrative work for the library. So I do come out often and I help at the circulation desk or make sure that things are going on during programming, everyone's fine.
Now, is this new position, I would guess, right? It would be a 10-hour position. Now, you're saying this is going to be a permanent position, or an on-call position, or is this the person that's going to work Saturdays because nobody else wants to work Saturdays?
Well, I'm not sure if will be the person that works Saturdays because no one else wants to, but I would hope that if I got this position filled, that I could put this person on for Saturdays. Because right now, everyone on staff rotates on Saturdays, so that means sometimes you're paying someone $30 an hour for a 4-hour shift, or sometimes you're paying someone $15 an hour for a 4-hour shift, or 4-hour shift.
Why is that?
Because I don't have a dedicated Saturday position. I don't have anyone on staff that's able to do that weekly. But if my hope for the 10-hour position is that I could advertise it so that it was just a Saturday position. It was one of the days it had to be a Saturday, and then at least one of the 2 people being paid would be paid at the lowest rate that we have.
But when you're saying you're paying them on Saturday, the 30 hours, is that because of overtime, or is that just because you have a very experienced person that's working on a Saturday rather than a $15 an hour person?
It's
I just want to
because-
understand it.
because you have a more experienced person working.
Which is probably good thing. Because then you don't have all the experienced people working during the week, because I would never be able, a lot of people would not be able to use it during the week and maybe only come in on Saturday. So you'd want an experienced person
There'll
to
always
mix
be-
with the,
Yes. There'll always be
Unexperienced.
one more experienced person, but the hope is that one of the two could be someone that was always consistently paid at the lowest rate.
And if I may add, so right now, we do have overtime, and because of the varying rates, on average, we're paying more than the $14.50 an hour that we're requesting. So if anything, this would probably, I think, actually save the town a little bit of money.
Oh, there are some people that would be,
No one is paid that as little as this right now. So this is a much lower rate than many.
oh, okay,
And,
okay.
so by doing this and preventing some overtime, well, not overtime, extra hours, I should say, overall, we actually.
So this would be a totally new person, not giving 2 or 3 other people 3 hours here and there, or,
Which is what we're doing.
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
And it's, the extra person would give us so much more flexibility, because for instance, I had 2 people who had issues last week who were out on the same day. And if that happens, there's only so many people I have left to call. And most of the time, those people have already worked for the whole day. So I have to ask them, would you mind going home for a couple hours and coming back? You know, and often enough, I have 3, often enough things like that come up, and we're in a bind.
So people work or have a certain number of hours. Most of our staff, I believe, are not looking for extra hours. They're really doing us a favor to come in extra hours.
and they don't want to work on Saturday.
And, right, and this position's less expensive, so it's,
Have you tried the senior tax work-off program to get people in? Is that any being successful?
We use that for certain parts of the library, but this is much more specialized work. I would feel uncomfortable leaving someone, there's a lot of computer skills that you need in order to just work on the circulation desk in general. There are a lot of different websites that you have to understand how to use and log into in order to order books from other libraries. I think it would complicate things more than help them.
and, sorry, and to
No,
add to
no.
that,
That's
some
probably the
of
last one.
trainings that Corinne alluded to are on all these, online or anything that has to do with electronic resources and all that. So it's actually not simple at all.
No, I can't imagine it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it being.
Okay, so.
I have one more question.
All right.
So, has there been any planning, like a 5-year plan of like program staffing and so you've been utilizing the staff and us really not knowing about it, which is fine. You've been utilizing your money. Now that the money is running out because of different fluctuations of people being paid and retiring and so forth. Now, do you see this coming back here? Okay, we're going to need another 20. This position needs to be 20 hours. This needs to be 15, or we need another person. I'm just trying to get my head around it,
Sure.
and it's a pretty big head.
I don't, as long as the building remains the same, I don't anticipate that we would need an additional position. I think this would give us flexibility. to
Give you
actually
flexibility in the
go to
upcoming years, so you're not coming back for more staffing.
Yeah.
See, earlier, I think you said something about being approximately 20, if I interpreted things right, being about 20 hours short right now. So this really only fills about half of the void that currently exists?
It does.
And
But I think we
what,
can get by for a number of years as long as nothing inside the building changes, or
Yeah.
nothing that we can't anticipate now changes.
We're being conservative.
Yeah.
okay, we're not going to make a decision tonight, are we?
We can.
Or do we need to, or? I don't even know, I'm glad they came in, because I have a whole different perspective
So
of
the
it
context
than when I
for-
started.
The context for the request is the proposed FY21 budget, and so it's really the request of what the board will recommend on this section of the proposed budget. Right now, the proposed budget does not include the 10-hour
Yeah.
new position.
Yeah, I understand that, so I think, in my own way, that my response for me to look at the budget in a responsible manner, that if other requests are going to come in that aren't added to the budget, then I have to start weighing them, unless we're going to start increasing people's taxes in a way that I really don't want to. You know what I mean? So I hear you, and I think it's a good,
We did request this
Mhm.
position when we submitted the budget.
I understand, but a lot of people requested a lot of things that we wish we could give, but then we start getting the death threats when everybody's taxes go up.
So, you know, I did just sort of rough math, and if I remember right, when I did it, I came up with, you know, the net effect of this when you account for the hours that you won't be paying for people at a higher rate, it looked like the difference was somewhere between, I don't know, 65% of what the cost would be for the 10-hour position, just from, you know, starting from scratch, because you're offsetting more
A higher
expensive
paid
hours.
person,
Yeah,
higher
yeah,
paid person.
yeah, so the, you know, I guess what I'm saying is that the difference isn't quite as much as it appears to be at first blush.
I thought
Does
we were
that
actually,
make
it was a
sense to
break
you?
even. I thought it was a break even.
Well, maybe I didn't run my number, I mean, you know, I was estimating things, I just kind of took what the information I had and tried to make sense of it,
Projecting,
yeah.
Of course, we're projecting for a full fiscal year.
Yeah.
That this would cost, actually, this position would be just slightly, maybe, I think, $600 cheaper than what we're currently.
Yeah,
But again, different people will work different number of hours.
Yeah.
They have different pay
It's
rates.
hard,
so
it's
only
hard
an
to get
estimate.
it exact.
right, right.
It's only an estimate.
Right.
So I
I'm
have to
I'm
ask
glad,
one more question.
glad you came in, I'm more favorably disposed towards it.
Well, you know, I guess I'd kind of like to move this forward and make a motion if that's, is there a reason not to?
No.
Okay,
Well, yeah, okay.
say again?
Well, this is just the first request from other, my thing would be try to weigh everything in, and because if we start saying yes now, and then we might have to say no to other people, just because we've said yes to them and not really weight each one for the benefit of the town. But, I got it. Can I ask another question? So this will not, I'm trying to look at it, I can't tell in this short period of time. These hours won't be given to somebody that's presently there, and then now make them a higher level and now become benefits eligible, and then a whole, you know what I mean by that? Then a whole different,
Cascade of effects.
a cascade of effects in costs.
One person, 10 hours.
I'm ready to make a motion, Glenn.
Well, Make it,
I'd move that we approve the 10 hours additional, the 10-hour additional position.
second,
If we could take a friendly amendment,
okay?
that we say the rate,
At $14.86 an hour? $14.50 an hour? Okay, thank you.
just so we.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
clean.
that's great. Okay.
Second. Did we already second
Yeah.
it?
I did, but, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great.
You convinced me, because I was a definite no before you sat down.
Thank you for listening, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, every time I go by, every time I go by there and I see the cars, it's just a great, I don't know, I feel good about it, and I'm not even in there having a good time.
We don't even know how.
I thought you told me you kicked me out for chewing gum.
Well, when you go by, look at the trees too.
Okay, we'll look at the trees. But we have to remember, we start saying yes, and we're giving Angus a harder time to get to we told him where we wanted this increase to be, so we can't yell at him when he doesn't get to the number that we want.
I don't yell.
Okay.
Oh.
Here we go.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, get them out of order.
When it gets out of order, I get,
What are you looking for right now, the agenda?
yeah,
You need one? Here it is.
okay.
Gee.
Okay, next item is discussion of the Board of Selectmen statement regarding former police chief Reed's contract non-renewal. So this came to light last week. Basically, we got a request from the media and from the local paper, and also the district attorney's office contacted us about whether they could say anything to the media. We didn't say anything to them. That was a discussion for the district attorney's office. We didn't give any comments either way about that. But we did prepare a statement that we gave to the Newburyport Daily News. And I will read that statement that we put out last week. The Board of Selectmen acknowledges that there was a sexual harassment complaint made against the former police chief Art Reed by a town employee in March 2018. This complaint was taken seriously and procedures were followed according to the town protocol in place at the time. An investigation was carried out and there was found to be a basis for the complaint. Disciplinary measures for the chief were handed down by the Board of Selectmen. The incident was reported to the Essex County District Attorney's Office. The Board of Selectmen also acknowledges that there were some unintended omissions in the investigation. All of the facts were not available or were not discovered until after the time of the investigation. Ultimately, however, all the relevant materials were made available to the Essex County District Attorney's Office. An additional oversight of the town was that the complainant should have been formally informed of the findings after the investigation. With this as part of the background, the board decided not to renew Chief's employment contract, and he is no longer an employee of the town. So I thought I'd give a little, very brief, and other people can chime in if I get something slightly wrong, timeline of what happened and what actually did happen. So as you recall, in the March of 2018, there was a big-time snowstorm. The town was out of power for 3 or 4 days, the whole town. And so in that event, the members of the fire department a lot of them were at the public safety building on call, dealing with down wires and so forth. So the building was full at that point with a lot of the volunteer firefighters. At that time, the complainant was the subject of some suggested comments by Chief Reed on more than one occasion during, I believe, on March 13th. The comments ranged for things like, "You're my favorite," "I want you to make breakfast for me." So those were the range of the comments that we were told. The complainant also stated, and this was verified by witnesses at the fire station, that the complainant was touched on the ear by the chief, and it made her uncomfortable, and it also made it was an uncomfortable situation for other people that were actually in the break room of the fire department. So it wasn't just no one saw it. Plenty of people did see this happen, and subsequently, when an investigation took place, verified this. So after this happened, this was reported to the town's sexual harassment officer, and an investigation was started basically on the next day. Individuals that were at the firehouse were interviewed, what they saw, what they heard, and a finding was brought up, and it was, no one argued that these events did not take place. The chief also admitted that this event took place. Interestingly, another person also had their ear pulled on, but this person did not make a complaint. Subsequent to that, so this was, so I don't have the exact date when the investigation was completed, but approximately a month after the event, a finding was a finding of the investigation by the sexual harassment officer of the town was written up and presented to the Board of Selectmen. In the how the in terms of how did this the definitions of the town, and also according to mass law in terms of what level of harassment this was, it did not rise to the level of something that was actionable by the Mass Commission Against Discrimination. That did not, they did not take that case. The go ahead.
It did not rise to the level of it hit the threshold on the state law, but it did violate our own personnel policy.
That's correct. So some disciplinary measures that were handed down by the Board of Selectmen to the chief. We actually just got a legal opinion today that it's a violation of the chief's privacy rights, that we can talk about what happened, but we can't talk about what the consequences, what the discipline is. It seems counterproductive, but we're working with what outside legal counsel actually told us we could talk about today. Subsequent to this, now we're into about the summer of, and the chief acceded to these, to the he did not fight the discipline that we had prescribed. Subsequent to this, in the a few days after the night out event for the police and fire in August of 2018, the complainant filed a formal complaint about the incident with the West Newbury Police Department. This formal complaint was forwarded to the Essex County District Attorney's Office. We gave them the findings of the town's investigation, Anything else about that,
Town
Glenn?
investigation and any other information that we got after that.
Right. And so the information that was forwarded to the Essex County District Attorney's Office, we never really heard further from whether or not they had pursued the case, dropped the case, or whatever. And they will never answer that question. It's not their policy to do so. But nothing has come of that. At the same time, this is now approximately September of 2018. The chief's contract is coming up for renewal in the end of December of 2018. And we had to notify the chief by October 26th that either yes or no on a non-renewal of his contract. If we didn't give him any 90 days notice, then his contract would automatically renew. So with this particular event and some other things that we were not particularly happy with, we were, and some other things that had happened subsequent to this event, we felt the easiest way and the most expeditious way to remove the chief was simply to non-renew the contract. If we had tried to non-renew the contract for cause, in other words, say we're gonna fire you, or we're gonna remove your we're gonna stop the contract now, that would have perhaps subject the town to a termination clause that.
Well,
Go ahead, Glenn. Yeah.
within that,
Mention the progressive
Yeah.
discipline
within
too.
the
Yeah.
contract, and this is not unique within Chief Reed's contract, there is a provision of progressive discipline.
Especially in police chief contracts.
Because the state feels that it's a very highly political position, and they don't want somebody, a new elected body, to come in and just be able to fire that person on a whim. So they have a progressive discipline. So first you have to give them a warning, then you have to write them up, and then if we terminated him for cause, then he has the right then to appeal that with a panel, a three-person panel. One being one that he gets to choose, one that we get to choose, and then one we choose together. And that panel, then it's taken out of our hands, and that panel makes a decision if we then terminated him, if there was enough cause to terminate him. And we felt because of, we did not want to take that risk, and I felt that we wanted to try to rid this person of West Newbury, at least I did, as fast as we possibly could, that notifying him that he was not going to have his contract renewed, and then trying to get him out here as fast as possible and letting him retire, in actuality, him leaving before his contract was actually fulfilled.
We think it might have been even faster to do it this way than, it's possible that he could have won the lawsuit. We could have a wrongful termination suit and won the appeal, and Chief Reed would still be here. And
and then it almost seemed like then those things would be taken out of our hands, and I didn't want someone else to be making those decisions and having that person still be here. Affecting.
It seems odd that non-renewal for no cause is easier than non-renewal for cause, but that's just the way
I'll tell you that.
police contracts are.
This is he was as a selectman, I fought for this. He was the first police chief, almost positive, that we did not put in his contract, or her contract, that, you can't, all the other contracts said, we had to renew them. We had no choice to renew those contracts unless it was for cause. This was the first one, and the one that we're presently in, we don't have to renew them. We can just say we don't want to renew them. All the other ones, we had to give a cause not to renew them, which ties your hand, then you're literally stuck with that individual no matter what, and you always have to prove that cause. Then it goes back to that
Tribunal,
process,
yeah.
that progressive discipline, where then, in some cases, it could be taken out of your hands, and you have a three-person board making that decision. Do you mind if I say a few things? Or are you done?
Let's see, I'm just trying to think, if we finished the timeline?
We got up to the timeline and of his dismissal.
Okay, so, again, we were not happy with the scenario. I was certainly not going to renew his contract, and neither was Glenn. I mean, we weren't going to go there. But this way seemed it just seemed like the fastest way to do it. We were afraid that because it was I recognize that it was a very trying event for the complainant, but it didn't rise to the level of something that would have necessarily won in a termination suit with the chief. So we went with getting him out the fastest way possible. And this question is, for example, is the chief now receiving a pension? And the answer is no.
That is the correct answer. But he tried to get a pension, and he was denied by the Essex County Pension Board, and he's trying to appeal it.
Okay, Glenn, you want to say some more stuff?
Well, this might be repetitive, what Archie said, but I like to say a few things. As a selectman, we sit in a position that sometimes we can't yell from the tallest mountain how we really feel. We have to follow policies, laws, and procedures set forth by the town, and especially by contracts. And in this case, all of them were in play. It's not as easy as one would think. This is not an excuse, it's just our reality. This was not done in a vacuum. I want many people to believe that. I understand, and I'm cognizant of the fact, and I do read social media, that you have 3 individuals that are men, and you had 3 individuals that are men that were on your select board. Decisions were not made in a vacuum with only men. We did many interviews, and we had received opinions from outside counsel, and they counseled us, I think, in the best efforts that we possibly could in this case. One thing I'd like to say that we can't, if somebody, I hope somebody or anyone might have some questions, because you deserve for us to try to answer them. And if we can't answer them, we're not trying to hide things or sweep things under a rug, but we have to follow those policies, those laws, and those procedures. Those were put in place generally to protect our employees, but in this case, to protecting somebody that I guess some people would say should not be deserved to be protected. But we do still have to follow those nevertheless. As Archie said, after the investigation, we have realized that it did not rise to the level of the mass sexual harassment statute, but it did violate our own personnel policy. And with that, which kind of binds our hands again,
we did do a disciplinary action towards the chief, and we cannot reveal that because of those same personnel policies that are in place. I've been the strongest advocate to push this as far as we possibly can go. I want everybody to understand that. This has been troubling me for a long time.
It's a troubling situation that the board had to deal with. I felt bad that the chief law enforcement officer of the town was not necessarily doing criminal activity, but activity that wasn't reflecting well on the town of West Newbury or its employees, and
Well, I'd like to
Yeah.
beg to differ with you there, because
in terms of what?
the criminal activity, I'm not sure if it's, I'm almost positive it's criminal, but I think we're not going to, which sickens me. I don't know how much this gentleman did, because before he left, he scrubbed all of the servers at the at the police department back to 1995, the internal ones, that we were not able to get them all back. And
No,
we got most of them back, but we were not be able to retrieve all of them. And he scrubbed his personal emails, his personal town account, which is two things that are against the law with open meeting law violations. And we have sent those to the AG for their thing.
so this was right, as far as we know, this happened right at his
Yeah,
leaving.
This is something we did not know until our new chief took over, and they've been working diligently trying to do that, because if nothing else, it compromises cases. It compromises our whole department. So I'm not really sure exactly what happened, which bothers me even more, because what I know happened sickens me. So, I do have some answers to some stuff. I think Nancy, because I have been cognizant of what's going on out there. There is no pension. He tried to get one. He was denied. He's trying to do that. There was a lot of concerns. Quite honestly, just so I couldn't be happier that this finally came out. So, in this selectman board, Archie and I are sitting here today. Rick was not on the board. I'm not going to speak for him, but I think he is too. Because when things like this get out, it gives the strength for other people to come forward. So other taxpayers, individuals that aren't even employees of the town, have come up to me and have expressed allegations, and I have to say allegations, against this chief of his strange behavior and his inappropriate behavior, and it was always towards women. Did not know this until after this came up.
So we feel good about this. We just, because of
We feel
personnel.
good when we did it. I don't feel good because.
No, good about getting it out, actually, yeah.
I think, and because, I'm not going to go into names or anything, but I want people to understand that people who came forward, and were strong enough to come forward, men who came forward, saw repercussions from this chief because they came forward, because they were doing their jobs. And I'm not going to mention people's names and put them on the spot, but people have to understand that we just weren't sitting around, and individuals in this town weren't sitting around just watching this individual just watch this individual. Again, see, I have to be candid in what I say because I'm afraid that I'm going to get sued. This man has threatened me, threatened my family,
Okay, if anyone has any questions, we'll be. Jen?
I just need some clarifying information, if that's okay. Going back to the first complainant who complained about the snowstorm incident at the fire station, just to clarify, was breakfast being made when he said, "I want you to make breakfast for me," or was that just something out of the blue?
I don't know,
I don't know.
but I think so.
I know sometimes the fire department
I
has breakfast
understand.
happening.
We have to understand the situation, that the fire department, Mike, I'm sorry, but what is it called when we have major?
Storm
Thank
coverage,
you.
yep.
So when you have storm coverage, they make sure that we have people there 24 hours a day,
Yep.
because when there's that much snow, you can't get from your house when your sirens go off to get there to then go rescue somebody. So storm coverage was in place, so people were there, we had barracks, people were sleeping there.
So it's
Obviously,
possible that breakfast wasn't needed.
I'm almost positive it was.
Did you, I didn't, you might have said it, but I didn't catch what the incident was with the second person. I think it maybe was at the National Night Out or something like that. What was that?
No, there was another incident that same time, the same
No,
time.
this was in August. You said something about August.
But I want to be clear. There was the same type of incident that happened to an individual the same time the complaint was. But it was, can I say this? But it was to a male.
It was to a male
The second one.
The second.
in
Yeah.
August?
No, in August, in August, there was a,
No, that was incident. We're talking about the breakfast incident.
yeah,
Breakfast was, so that was the second person who had their ear touched?
yes, that is
That was
correct.
a man.
Yes.
Okay.
And some other involuntary touching and intimidation.
And that was a firefighter?
Wait, I think there may be some misunderstanding.
Okay.
The initial complainant also brought forward the complaint in August. So it's the same person bringing forward the complaint
Thank
twice.
you. That's
which I
clarified.
thought.
So there wasn't a second thing in August?
No, it was formally brought to the, at that point, it was brought to the police department as a formal complaint. It had never been brought to the police department until then.
I hear you. Okay, thank you for that.
Are you saying that, did we get other complaints from individuals about this individual?
Well, you said yes after we, that's
Yeah,
what
we
you just
have.
said. Nothing
have.
else that was reported beyond talking to you about it, though? Nothing formally reported to the police?
Okay, this is where, okay, I'm glad you made
Go-
this distinction.
No, yeah,
When you bring it to the police, they, that's something totally different from us.
Okay,
That was, they were trying to press charges against
Okay.
him.
okay.
Okay, so that had nothing to do with that. That goes to the police, then that information then was sent to the DA.
Got it.
But it was after, it's the same incident, but it was months after our investigation. And then when they went and made the complaint to the police department, which was the
In
proper thing,
August,
in August for the assault,
yeah.
then the DA asked us for all the information about the incident that happened in March.
And that was
Same.
complainant number one who did that?
That is
not the
correct.
second one.
Correct.
Same person.
Yeah.
Correct.
You keep referring to the personnel policy. What section is it that you're referring to that it's in violation of, just so I can,
We'll get you that. I'm sorry, I should have that from you, I'm sorry.
right?
If Mike was here, he would tell you, right? He's probably getting ready for the election.
Yeah. All right, and also.
Mike?
You can get it to me, that's fine. In terms of, you said you sent some more information to the Attorney General's office. I think it's about the scrubbing of the computer, is that right?
No, that stuff we sent to the DA.
To DA.
No,
And you said you're,
that went
oh,
to
which
AG.
one?
AG. I'm sorry,
AG's office.
AG.
Yes,
Attorney General, right?
yes.
AG scrubbing, DA Salem for the assault.
Okay, but to the AG's office, and you said you're hoping to hear, do you have any idea when you're gonna hear from them on that? Any
Your luck is as good as mine.
sense? Okay. And when did you send that to them?
A year ago?
Quite a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was basically concurrent with when we learned about it, late.
Basically, whenever Jeff
Duran took over as interim chief,
Oh, and he brought that information to you.
because he became the new chief.
Got it.
And then, just so, maybe we need some clarification on this, and somebody's going, how the heck was he able to do that?
Right,
Well, he was the only person who had the access.
right.
Only one person had access to that
And so,
computer.
if nothing else, quite honestly, we're all ignorant of that situation, so now that ability is not left. Now we have a town manager who has,
Also with us.
yes, and we have more backup and stuff, so that situation can never happen
Yeah,
again.
well, and yeah, just to be clear, I don't have access to the public safety server. What happened, which is Glenn's referring to, is the public safety server was upgraded.
Uh-huh.
So that could never happen now because there's more redundancy. And it should be noted that the, public safety IT person, Chief Dwyer, had raised this concern over the years.
Right.
That there were, concerns about the server and the lack of redundancy and backup. So in prior budget cycles over the years, that has been raised, actually, I believe, with 3 different chiefs, if I remember our conversation correctly. So, but the server's now been
So you took
upgraded
care
to
of
something.
getting that upgraded, so this couldn't happen again.
We found the money
Okay.
to do that.
That was your role, not that you have access to it, is that what you're saying?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And then finally, you spoke about, something about people who spoke up against Chief Reed and had repercussions. Has anything been done to make them, like, what kind of repercussions are we talking about? In terms of, are the people
Intimidation,
right?
being left out of company-wide meetings and not even knowing they were going on.
Okay. I get it.
Face-to-face,
But some people
face-to-face.
have not been not promoted or not gotten a
No,
raise
absolutely
or
not.
anything like
No,
that?
no.
That's not
No.
what you're talking
No,
about?
no, no, we're talking about personal.
Subtle things.
Subtle things,
Personal intimidation
personal intimidation.
of, him confronting them and then, I don't know, most of it, but,
Okay.
but none of the compensation, none of the promotions, none of anything like that was ever,
Okay.
no.
Thank you.
What's
Does
next?
anybody have any questions? Would be remiss if we didn't ask.
Hi guys,
Hi.
Vanessa Graham. I had some questions. You have answered a lot of them. You've given like a lot of information, and I appreciate Glenn putting this on the agenda at such short notice. I'm just sort of filling in some holes here. So this was kept from the public, and then the media became aware, and that's why we are aware of it now. And was it?
See, one thing, we don't keep things from the public. It's our policy, and in the policy that we're not, we have to understand that we don't comment on personnel issues. So that goes both ways. There are no like DNI, there are no DNI, what you're seeing from Bloomberg and stuff. Anybody can speak about them if they want. So the victim could have spoke about it all the time, and I think this is the reason what happened. Somebody gave some information, which wasn't us, to the newspaper. The newspaper started investigating, and they went to the DA's office and asked for some information. And then the DA's office gave them the information. So we're not keeping it from the public. When you say, I guess, in definition, we are keeping it from the public, but we don't have a choice.
We were doing it in terms of what we're supposed to do in terms of personnel policy, but at this point, the cat was out of the bag, so to speak, so there's no reason to not be fully open about it. Now, we were doing what we were told by council to sort of, you might say we're going a little beyond what we should be doing, but we're trying to be open. At this point, there is some knowledge out there, and might as well have the whole, as far as I'm concerned, the whole thing we might as well be open about the entire situation, so that people actually know the truth. We weren't supposed to do that, but we're doing it.
And Angus probably was on the phone with outside counsel that specializes in this probably for an hour today, and we sat for an hour before, or we spent from 5 to 6 o'clock and probably even after that. trying to figure out what we can and what we can't say, so we don't, so the town doesn't get sued.
Well, and that's just today, I mean, that's just.
Oh, no, I'm just talking about
Yeah,
today.
just
That's
to get
just,
clear,
that,
outside
we
counsel,
we have
they-
spent so much time on this.
Okay, so you were either advised or there's no protocol to notify members of the community when there's a perpetrator with a badge on, like patrolling. What is the responsibility to the members of the community? What's that?
Great question.
The
That's what
employees have a lot of protections, and,
See, but, hold on.
no, let me finish, and then,
Okay.
Len, I was talking.
Sorry.
Employees have a lot of protections, and we're getting advice that, A, you can't say this, you can't say that, and although certainly not something that I like at all, they didn't seem to rise to the level of being a threat to public health or something, that they totally appalled by these activities, but at the same time, they didn't rise to the level of things that that would have been a fireable offense, which would have been what we really would have liked to have done.
Notifying the community.
We would have been, the town would have been, we would have been sued by,
Because it didn't meet the threshold. When I went to interrupt him, that's what I was actually going to say, what he just said. It's not like this individual was convicted of raping somebody, and then we didn't tell the individuals and it happened again. So the only complaint that we had got did not even rise to the level of the state sexual harassment.
But it violated the town's policy.
Yes, and then we put him, and I can't tell you the discipline things that we did, but we did, right? And if then we notified the town, we would have been sued. Honestly.
and we would have lost.
Yeah, I mean, and then he might still be here, or we pay him for the next 10 years.
Damages,
And
which
then
is
we
like,
couldn't do things at the school, I
So the
mean,
protocol is if you have a substantiated sexual harassment claim, you cannot notify the community, even if you keep that perpetrator on payroll.
see, you just asked a question that didn't happen. So I don't know the answer to that question.
He stayed on
Because-
payroll though.
No, but you said about the sexual harassment. It didn't rise to the level of sexual harassment
as defined by the Commonwealth.
but by the Commonwealth. So your question's not the right one. In that case, without a doubt, in my mind.
But it violated the town's policy. I don't
Personnel-
understand the point of the
but-
town's
but no.
policy. if
Our,
the
our,
standards
our,
were
our,
raised to
our
the-
policy is significantly more rigorous than the Commonwealth's.
Right, but right now, when you talk about what the standard is and following protocol, you're talking about the state level. What's the point of the town policy if you can't really do anything with it?
Well, we were able to,
Town policy all the time, right? I mean, just think about running a business. Everybody doesn't do their job and might get written up and there might be docked pay or suspended and things like that. That honestly, Vanessa, that happens all the time. And we can't be going out doing that. So this didn't rise to the
Glenn-
level of the sexual harassment, or
as defined by the Commonwealth.
yeah, or even defined by our own personnel policies. But he broke them by the
Touching alone is considered
touching.
unwanted touching is considered a
Yeah,
violation
it's
of the
un-
personnel
unwritten-
policy.
Unwanted physical contact.
Excuse me?
It's assault by other standards too, maybe not this town's, but when you put your hands on someone sexually,
But
and
you
there's a,
just made a big leap there.
what was the leap? That he was
Sexual.
touching,
Sexually. Vanessa, I'm with you 100%. Honestly, I am, but you're saying things that didn't really happen, but.
like what am I saying that didn't happen? He touched someone's ear, it was unwanted,
Mhm.
unwanted touching.
Yes, but you
Okay.
said unwanted sexual touching.
I think,
But if somebody punched somebody in the face, that
I
and I'm-
think
you
the
said-
board is having some, excuse me, Mr. Parker, I don't mean you, it's having some trouble with the nuances of sexual harassment versus, you brought up rape, I mean, we're talking about he's intimidating people, he's got his hands on people, he's making comments to people.
Yeah.
What is the
But,
point of
Vanessa,
the
we
town's
can- we
sexual
only-
harassment policy if you can't do anything with it? Why even write?
well, we did, he was disciplined because of them,
We did. We
which,
did.
which according to this Commonwealth, we wouldn't do anything about it.
We did. We did. And we spent
And he's
thousands of dollars to come up with this.
and
This
he's
was just
also,
not
he's
factual.
also no longer here.
Yeah.
And he would, if it rose, if the Commonwealth wouldn't do anything about it.
I can understand you want to fall back on the, I'm unclear about the values of the board members, protecting the community. I mean, I don't feel protected by you. If that's, I mean, this guy, who knows what he did to other people while he stayed on payroll here.
That wasn't a very long time.
When you're a victim, you don't need a lot of time for
Yeah,
someone to do
Yeah,
something.
I would
mean,
agree,
that's-
I would agree with that. If it was a month, if it was a year, if it was 3 years, I would agree with that. But we followed through with every possible complaint and rumors that we had, because it seems like everybody wants to talk to me and comes to me, that we found out weren't. We didn't put our heads under a rock. We did the best possible thing we could, and when we could get rid of him and get rid of him and felt that we could keep an eye on him and made sure that things didn't happen, see, I can't even tell you, because we'll get sued. We did that. So honestly, I believe that when you say you don't have trust in us, that we make right decisions, that you feel protected, maybe I can empathize with that, but that's not true. But I can understand your point of view. It's not true, because we made sure it
Allowing a
wasn't.
perpetrator to stay in the community and not tell anybody in a position of power, chief no less, with a badge on, public safety, that's not protecting the community, at least the folks that, his potential victims. How many victims were there confirmed, including witnesses?
I don't know what that question is.
I don't understand the question.
So according to the policy you guys have now in sexual harassment, a witness is also a victim if they're a witness of the behavior. So there are people that witnessed the behavior and there are the actual recipients of the behavior, so in
But
total.
honestly, we have the investigation, you can look at. We won't-
Okay,
But
but how many
I want
was
to
that?
tell you right now that I don't think that if, I don't want to make a comment about that.
You can't tell me how many victims there were?
No, because that, no, because I'm not even sure how you're defining victims as
I'm
witnesses.
defining it from the town policy on sexual harassment.
Yeah, so you're saying witnesses are victims, so I'm not sure how many people were in the room. I know how many people were interviewed.
So you have no idea how many victims there were.
Well,
So you're not answering my question, Vanessa. I'm saying to you, what you're saying right now, are you saying the witnesses of what happened, are you defining them as victims? Is that what you're saying?
You already have per the town policy. I'm asking how many there are.
You still didn't answer my question, just to make it easier. Are you asking me,
I think she is going, yeah.
so you're saying, I know, but I just want to be clear. So, there could have been more victims. That's what, you're asking me to put a number on it, because there were a lot of people in the room.
No, I'm asking you to put a number on it because you did an investigation, and I would
Yes,
expect that you
yes.
know how many victims there were of this guy, at least that were substantiated.
So you're saying victims are witnesses. So if somebody witnessed him touch the individual when he wasn't supposed to, that person is now a victim also.
Per your town policy, yes. As defined. I have it in my bag, I can get it out for you if you want.
I would love to see that, because they're confusing me.
Great.
And I'm sorry that I'm confused about it. You wouldn't mind getting Mike in here, would you, please? Hmm?
per our personnel policy, somebody that witnesses an unwilling touching, that person becomes a victim?
No, no.
You need to be on a microphone, please.
It depends. I mean, you can be if you are a witness of an act that would rise to the level of constituting sexual harassment.
Which this
But
didn't, this did not.
This did not under the state law. It would have to be an incident that of some real extreme, you know, I mean, problems.
Yeah, this says, on page 37 here of our personnel policy, the victim may be someone who is affected by the harassing conduct even when it is directed toward another person.
Right, but that's, they could be, but then you have to meet the standards of what constitutes a rise to the level of sexual harassment. It has to be both subjectively and objectively something that would be considered to be intimidating or that type of situation.
So I would say that the individuals that then were interviewed did not in any way tell us that they were affected by that in that particular way. I would say that would be an answer to your question. And if they were, we would have researched that even more.
Okay, so there's 2 substantiated victims and we're not counting
I didn't say that. I didn't say
the
that.
man and the woman?
But that person did not make, the second person did not make a complaint.
I'm trying, okay.
What are you trying to understand? Because I feel like we're combative and I don't want to be. I'm trying to answer your questions, but I'm sorry, but.
I came here to get some information because I'm just learning about this.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how widespread it is. That's my question about victims. I'm
So
going
am
off
I.
of the language here, which probably could be improved because it doesn't talk about
That's-
rising to the level.
That's one of my things that I'm going to close at. It's something that we learned, that we need to change those policies. Because those, especially under conditions like this, they restrict us too much.
Because that policy was revised after the complaint in March. It came out in May. So was the sexual harassment portion revised then?
You're asking me questions I have no answer to, and I don't want yeses and nos, because then I'll be vilified over in Facebook over it. I don't know, but I can get you that answer.
Okay, if you can get the information, that would be great.
So you made an assumption about 2 victims. So I think Michael Karen answered your question when you said the witnesses can become victims. In this case, they weren't. So I just want to make sure that you're clear. So in this case, they weren't. Now I understand what we were saying. And he, I think, answered that question. So in this case, they weren't.
Okay. Who was the selectman that voted to renew Reed's contract, if I have that information right?
It wasn't me.
I saw that on Facebook.
It wasn't me.
Rick wasn't here.
So who was before Rick, Joey?
Joe Anderson.
So it doesn't have to be unanimous for the contract, it just is a vote?
It's a majority, like anything, it's a majority of a vote. The question, she didn't have an answer, microphone, was it doesn't have to be unanimous, it can just be a majority.
Because what you're saying is it's not that this was
Wow. So I'll just finish with this. I can see that you guys did a lot of work. But I see you working within maybe parameters that are very limiting in terms of helping the victim as opposed to sort of protecting the town. And I think the lack of diversity on this board is a liability to the town. And I'll end with that.
Well, I just want to disagree that we're not, this board or any other board that I've sat on has not protected the perpetrator over the victim in any particular case. Because this is not the first time
For him, or even they're just dealing with sexual harassment?
dealing with sexual harassment. For me. But this was, for me, the hardest.
Okay, well, I'm sure it was really hard for the victims too.
Without a doubt. Can't even imagine.
given all this and not relitigating any of the facts that we've already talked about here, have you considered any new activities to help facilitate reporting if this would happen in the future? So something like an anonymous tip line or some sort of reporting mechanism that might give potential victims a little bit more protection in this process, given, you know, some of the concerns that have been raised?
Yes,
Okay.
without a doubt.
What kinds of things are you thinking about?
Everything that you just said.
Okay.
And having a female sexual harassment officer, which we don't have.
Which we used to have.
Which we've been asking this town, because it's an appointed position by this board, and begging individuals during the appointment process that we need a female. We used to have one, and we only have a male on there. And we've been asking everybody, and no one has stepped forward. And now we've realized that, and we realized that, and now we have it.
Do you think that there's any community outreach that could be done to, you know, help address some of the concerns that Vanessa raised and let people know that, you know, the board is approachable on these issues, and let people know maybe proactively how they might, you know, in the future go about reporting concerns?
Mm-hmm. No, I can understand. I can understand. I don't believe that the lack of diversity or having men up here would have changed anything. Having a woman would have changed anything. But please let me. But I can understand when people, because you're governed by too many things, and we had, you know, outside counsel and having women's counsel. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have been any different. But I can see having an all-member board. And having that as intimidating, that maybe an employer, a woman, an individual could not come forward to us, or, you know, there is a process. They need to go to the department head first, or if they don't feel comfortable having, I can see that. I mean, I don't live in a vacuum.
But in this particular situation, it was addressed almost immediately.
The complaint was put in on one day, and the process started the next day, and it went to fruition, and there was discipline.
Clarify my question. I'm not talking about in the past, I'm saying going forward. Is there a way, do you think, that the select board can sort of create a new, you know, going forward, a new environment that might prevent?
Are there any, I mean, we'd love input. So do you have any particular thoughts that?
Well, I mean, I think putting some sort of anonymous tip line would be very helpful, and then also, you know, not something that just goes into the ether, but something that actually, you know, is then followed up on.
Taken
care of. And then, but I think also just maybe releasing a statement or something, you know, after, as much as you can, just saying, you know, that you recognize that this was, you know, a public statement, not just here, but something that the whole town can see, that you recognize that this was really painful for people. I think there are probably, as Vanessa said, a lot more people who have encountered problems with the chief, and maybe giving them an opportunity to, you know, talk a little bit more openly about what it should look like going forward for people who want to report these kinds of incidents. I think it's tough in a small town.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, I would think, you know, hopefully I'm not wrong at this or speaking out of turn, but, you know,
Need to get close to you.
yeah, I mean, in terms of, you know, how you define an anonymous tip line, if there was an issue, an email to the selectman's office, you know, it'd be addressed. And I don't know if that's anonymous, and I don't know how well you define anonymity. You know, it's.
You know, I don't know either. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
This isn't, you know, my area of expertise
Yeah.
or anything, but I do think that, you know, given that this happened and that some people have raised some concerns about whether, you know, they can feel supported in the future making complaints, maybe it would be a good opportunity to be proactive for the board to be proactive and let people know, you know, that while you can't comment on these particular details, know that, you know, diversity notwithstanding, female sexual harassment officer notwithstanding, that the board, you know, is working hard to try to protect people.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I wasn't on the board at this point, but I've kind of been, you know, I've heard a lot in the last, you know, few months, or however long ago this, I became aware of the situation. And, I've thought about it a fair amount, and I don't see how the board could have dealt with it more quickly and yet stayed within legal bounds. Because at some point, you obviously you need to protect people. And, at some point, maybe it becomes, I think if there was perceived to be a genuine physical threat to the population at large, the board would have been on it in an instant. But you try to deal with the situation to move the problem, or to address the problem and remove the problem, or sort of neuter the problem as quickly as you can.
Sure. And I understand that, and I think what Vanessa is saying, and I'm maybe echoing her a little bit, is that there seems to be a couple of different levels to this. One, when you have a police chief who's a bad actor, that, is a very difficult thing to deal with personally. But two, it seems like maybe there isn't the appropriate system in place, or there wasn't at the time, to allow you to act more quickly, or the community to know what was going on. And we understand we understand the legalities, but I'm saying there could be a way, in terms of the optics of it for the community, to feel more protected if the board proactively in the future were to do a little bit of outreach to the community and just say, we understand what your concerns are, and in the future, and explain to people proactively what this process and system is, and allow them to participate in it a little bit more. I'm not calling anybody's previous decisions into question. I think what you've laid out makes sense, and you were getting outside legal counsel, but I'm just saying in the future, going forward, maybe we can do things differently. God forbid if the situation came up again, and in a way that
We don't want something like this to happen again.
well, no, I don't think anybody does, but I think
Yeah.
the reality is that it will. That's
What I'm hoping for is that from tonight, people might not think it, but if he did affect any other individuals, that they understand that they do have the support of us, and we'll do everything we possibly can to do that. So I hope they would feel free to be able to. I've had individuals come to my own home and report stuff to me because they felt that they could not come to the town offices because they were afraid.
But
So,
I think there's also something like an anonymous,
No, that's an excellent idea.
That
That's,
could
without a
help
doubt,
people
that's
to
an excellent
report.
idea.
And also, people have different comfort levels and
But it only,
different
but
willingness to.
how would that, Mike, can I ask a quick question? When you say anonymous, so we only can, so if somebody
Maybe
brought.
confidential might be a better word.
Yeah, because we
Confidential
couldn't
that goes
follow
to a
through.
third party.
We can't really do much
With it's anonymous.
like.
It all things, because of the
So
policy,
confidential
all-
might be a better word.
they're all confidential. So maybe we need to make sure that we make sure people even understand that even the present system that I think we can even make better, is a confidential system.
Yes, I think that would go a long way to help, because for an outside person looking in, they don't necessarily know that the board, didn't support the chief at the time, and it may not have felt safe for people to come and send you an email,
I can see that.
That's a very good point.
I can see
Okay,
that. I can see that 100%.
And so, I think it's incumbent on town officials then to set up a system that both helps people to feel safe and also allows them to report without, fear of retaliation.
It's
Well, one of the biggest things I think that will help is having a female. We for years we had a male and a female sexual harassment officer. That a female could come. I think it would be not knowing, but I would think my wife or my daughter or my mother would be able to talk to somebody about a situation like that, to a woman rather than to a man. And so I'm glad finally we have that in place. And we've been asking the townspeople to come forward.
But this may bring a little more light to it and
but we have
help with that,
somebody
yeah.
now.
Well, I think that's all good, so, hopefully can do things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Okay, thank you, people, for your comments. Thank you very much. We wish this whole thing had never happened. Is this where you wanted to take a quick break, Angus?
If you want to jump ahead to later in the agenda, it's just going to take me a second to sync the
Okay.
Wi-Fi. But it could take 2 or 3 minutes.
The revisions to the animal control officer, are they generally,
It's budgetary. The terms are spelled out there in the packet.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to?
I think what's it up, 4% or something, Angus? Or
That's about right.
What do you want us to move on with?
Well, I don't know, I'm focused on
Let's do
getting
that,
this
let's
set
do
up,
that.
so.
I mean, do you have a problem?
If you want to take a recess, that's okay too, I just.
How about the meeting minutes?
We normally have a wire, but the wire went missing,
Request for operation
so.
apply for Green Communities grant and
No, let's do the minute, let's do the minutes.
Wendy, did you, were you here for something in particular?
I was just
Budget?
interested in the recap of the MVP.
Oh, okay.
why don't we do that?
Sure, we can do that. I was just going to do that from the notes in my phone.
Is it even on the?
It is.
It's down here.
L. Why don't we do that?
L. Glenn, you're so organized, crossing things.
Oh, I can't, I get all mixed up. That one, well, horrible situation to talk about.
So, yeah, I mean, this will be a short recap of it. You know, we had,
What a great turnout.
yeah, real good turnout. There were somewhere between 40 and 45 people. I guess I should, somewhere between 40 and 45 participants. Archie was there, and all right. So it started out with a pretty eye-opening presentation on climate change and the causes, the impacts, the reality of it. You know, then we moved on to groups where we worked on defining both strengths and vulnerabilities in town. And then, again, this is going to be a really thumbnail sketch of it. Took that information, staying in the same groups, looked at ways to potentially address the vulnerabilities or take advantage of the strengths, and then in the end aggregated all the different groups' information together to try to come up with focus areas or action areas. And I'll just kind of run through with what they are in terms of what got the most votes. The first was emergency communications and communication infrastructure, sort of led by improving cellular, wireless, and radio infrastructure, so dealing with both public and public safety communications in the event of power loss. I mean, we don't have great cell coverage in town because we don't have any antennas in town, or have very, very few. And but that impacts, you know, in the event that we have something, you know, some kind of climate-related, you know, ultimately it's weather-related, I guess, event happen where we need good communication. We're not as assured as we might like of it to have that. We need to understand the vulnerable populations in town and how to contact them, how to reach out to them. And then taking a little bit harder look maybe at the Code Red service to make sure that it's reaching as many people as it can for information. Then open space preservation came up as the second most important aspect from a number of standpoints.
Open space?
It did, yeah. In terms of this is sort of protecting your vulnerabilities.
So you're protecting your open space, or we need more open
Well, you use your open space as a way to one of your strengths, or what can be one of your strengths, is minimizing your contribution to climate change. Open space helps you do that. Open space also becomes a place to absorb water.
Water absorption.
And forests become a are a significant factor in water absorption and in soil stability. Because there are a couple of areas in town where, for instance, historically there have been landslides and land could slump again. Now, you might think that's not for real, but it is for real. It's happened in the past, and you can see evidence of slow motion in ground in a couple of places in town. There was also discussion with invasive species management. Again, that's relevant to open space. So open space was a broad category of different issues. There was discussion of water supply protection, looking probably as much as anything else focused on the dam across the Artichoke, which we think of as Newburyport's problem, but in fact it's our problem too. And if that dam became overtopped and affected Newburyport's water, it would also potentially contaminate our well fields.
Did you look at the dam at Mill Pond? Just for flooding purposes with climate change?
Yeah, I think.
That one's in pretty good shape.
Yeah, that one, there was an evaluation done of that in the last year, and it was considered to not be a high hazard. Number 4 was something that we've already done some work on, which was, we did a feasibility study for municipal microgrid. That was the number 4 item. So a municipal microgrid with backup storage for emergency shelter and senior housing, to deal with this municipal campus. Something we didn't talk about because it wasn't really a climate effect, but, arguably, but there's also sort of business continuity for the town. If the town is able to continue operating all of its services, if there is, a significant weather-related event, you need to keep this campus up and running. And then the 5th, I don't know if I want to go through all of them, but the 5th was to assess vulnerable neighborhoods and plan to address vulnerabilities such as erosion and flooding. For instance, perhaps the most vulnerable neighborhood would be River Road, where there are, not only is there potential erosion and flooding issue on the road, but if it is flooded, a significant number of homes along that road could actually be isolated. So people wouldn't be able to get out for what they needed, and people wouldn't be able to get in. Emergency services wouldn't be able to get in. I don't know if I need to go through. There's another 5.
What happens after this?
Well, so there'll be a report and an open public session for presentation and discussion sometime in the next couple of months. Don't know exactly when that'll be, but it all has to wrap up by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Wendy, did I miss anything significant?
No, but just that after that, there's the opportunity to apply for grant funding to implement
Yeah.
Some of the
these
things?
action items, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it seemed like not necessarily big, but thinking out of the box projects or,
Get funded more?
that seemed like the vibe I got, that like sort of cutting edge things and not necessarily small changes with what they were looking at.
Yeah.
Did you get that feeling, Wendy, or?
Yeah, I think they focused on, like natural mitigation type things, so they're not looking strictly to replace culverts and things like that, they are looking at a bigger picture.
Right.
Yeah.
What would be a bigger picture for us, you think? I hate to put you on the spot, I'm sorry.
Well, it depends what action item we're trying to address.
Of course.
Yeah, but in some cases, you might be able to both do, mitigation, sort of minimizing our contribution to climate change at the same time that you're adapting or protecting a vulnerability. So you might be able to get multiple benefits from the same kind of action. And that might be, I don't know, opening up drainage where where swales have been filled by people throwing their yard waste away and causing flooding, because there is a certain tendency for people to take a depression and think it's a thing to fill, when it really was supposed to, or historically had been a drainage swale. And so now you end up with a flooding problem, and you may also affect the habitat there, which affects what can grow there, and has a negative impact on our contribution to CO2 production.
Cool. Do you mind if I get some water before we start this? How long is it going to be? 5-10 minutes?
The presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah, then some discussion.
Oh.
The presentation is 12 slides.
But then the discussion's going to be 2 hours.
I'll get it. Did they talk
All right.
about invasive species?
Yeah, we did talk about invasive species, yeah. That was sort of wrapped into the, I think it was the second, not first item, or no, it was wrapped into the second item.
It's definitely on my short
Yeah,
list of concerns.
no, that's something definitely for us to talk about. Invasive species management was part of the open space preservation, involving open space agriculture and forests. We tried to group these into as broad areas because otherwise we would have ended up with 100 bullets. And in the end, we pulled things into rational groups.
I have to say, that it seemed like we diluted it a little bit by broadening things too much.
You think so?
People wanted to coalesce too much. I
Yeah.
kind of like bullets, but
I think they were, had an eye towards the grant funding for action items. If you make it too specific, then it can be limited. Because it's these
Okay,
specific
okay.
action items that we would apply for grants to implement. So the consultant told us ahead of time that we need to be intentional.
Oh, okay, well, so I didn't know that, okay.
But Archie, along your lines there, you'd mentioned it seemed like there's a fair amount of money. I think there's a reasonable amount of money available through the state, and it's going to be available on an ongoing basis. Yeah, so, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice night.
See ya.
Next item on the agenda is the presentation of the fiscal year 21 budget. And these slides were presented to the Finance Committee about a week ago. They've officially started their process. And you have in your packet the schedule of FinCom meetings. They've been through not quite half of the departments so far, with 2 meetings last week, and they have meetings coming up next Tuesday and Thursday, March 10th and 12th. So this is, while this material has all been presented to you in paper, this is the formal presentation of the proposed budget. So I start with just a brief recap of the policy direction that the board voted back in December. The board set the objective that the proposed operating budget would be intended to limit the average single-family tax increase to no more than 2%, not including the impact of the middle and high school project. The board called for a clear, transparent budget process. FY21 would be the first year of recommended drawdown of the school stabilization fund based on a multi-year strategy. As you know, the town's been putting funds into that account for a number of years, and now that FY21 will, the first bill comes due from the initial debt service on the middle high school, the board a couple of months ago had endorsed a policy direction to begin drawing down that fund. So that's not reflected in the budget. It is a warrant article. Fourth item is to take into account proposed capital planning and projects, and specifically to add the Middle Street Bridge to the capital program and a means to pay for it, because that bridge hadn't been part of prior year's capital planning processes. The fifth item is include any estimated impacts of new regulatory mandates and how those can affect costs. And finally, to ensure that authorization to expend funds from different sections of the budget is specified. That hasn't always been done in the past. This slide it just summarizes the fairly lengthy packet that you have in front of you. Page 1 and 2 is the summary and the estimated tax impact. And that's the summary is what you see there. So that basically has got the prior couple of years actual, the current year budget and year to date. The next column is the department head / board committee commission proposal, and then the FY21 town manager proposed. So that's just at a glance, a lot of numbers, and that all kind of rolls up all the detail that you see in the subsequent pages. And I'll return to the estimated tax impact. Pages 3 to 34, those are the detail sheets. Those are the per department budgets, and I highlight with notes. You have to read the fine print. I put a lot of real content into those notes in terms of understanding what's really going on. Supporting documents, there's a transmittal memo that was sent to the FinCom about 10 days ago, which highlights some key information, and I think is definitely, you want to read that for sure. We've got some charts in there with assessed values and trends on tax rates and assessed values. Revenue estimating worksheet, you'll recall from last year, we've begun specifically projecting revenue. We do that every fall with the tax rate recap to DOR. Building it into the budgeting process is really important because it's a key input to the tax rate impact or estimated impact. Free cash trends from FY15 to 20, I'll circle back to that one. That's a big topic. New growth and projected new tax revenues based on prior 5 years. And then the estimated per department taxpayer costs. So we put that together for the current FY20 budget to help people get a sense of, if their house is valued at a certain level, roughly how much of their tax bill is going to support different sections of town and school operations. I thought so too, and the FinCom liked that too. I think we're going to work on an exhibit along those lines for the FinCom booklet. We've put a lot of thought. The FinCom's really provided a...
It makes it simple, brings it, I don't know.
Yeah, it does, and I think it's good. Yeah, they like it too. And then, of course, the articles, the town meeting articles.
Stacks of pennies.
We focus on the operating budget, but as you know, we expend, quite a lot of money through the articles. And so the FinCom and the town has a long tradition, which is tremendous, as good as I've ever seen in the town, of this fund balance report. Really helps you understand what's available, what's on the table for voting.
This is so good, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something, obviously I inherited that. That's been here for a long time, and it's just wonderful because it really, well, it's an estimate and it's not, necessarily down to the penny. It's pretty darn good, and it's pretty darn close, yeah. And so I've got that later in the show, the show. So then you see for each of those pages 3 to...
This is a little too much, huh? This isn't like the Super Bowl.
The detail sheet, this is just, this is just the fire department, but these are the pages 3 to 34. This is the type of detail that you see for each of the departments. The prior couple of years expended, the current year budget and actual. We're 64.1% through the year, or at least as of the data from February 20th. So that just helps give you a barometer of which categories of budget are on track with the budget, which are underspending or overspending. And then the proposed town manager and the proposed change, both in dollar amount and percent. So you have that level of detail for the entire line item budget. In terms of the estimated taxpayer impact, this is not an exact science, and I certainly welcome your input, but we make our best effort. The board's policy calls for an impact not greater than 2%, not including the middle high school project. So the way we arrive at that, and if you think of something better, you think we missed something, by all means, let me know. This is just the second year we've done this, so, but we take the FY19 budget, take 2% of that, and actually it says 19, it should say 20. The current year budget, 2% of that, add projected new growth, and we just take a simple 5-year average of new growth, and then we estimate any additional local receipts, meaning non-property tax revenues that we would expect to receive next year. We project a very modest increase. You may remember, especially Archie and Glenn, from 19 to 20, there was actually a pretty significant increase in projected non-property tax revenues. We're not, you know, I think we basically made an adjustment to make it more accurate, and now it's going to be pretty stable going forward.
I mean, if you, we have put up, say, you know, building permit fees, those kind of things, a little, it makes a little difference, but not huge.
It made a pretty, I think the building permit fees is going to end up being a 6-figure difference.
6 figures?
I think so, because I don't know if you have the numbers handy, but it generates a fair amount of revenue, and we essentially doubled fees. So, you know, with the construction activity you see, it's hard to say now at this time of year because most of the building permit activity is still ahead of us in terms of the fees. It's going to be in the spring.
Yeah.
But we think that's going to be a healthy number. And planning board adjusted their fees recently. That's going to be a small dollar impact, certainly. So when you add all that up, I've estimated about $510,000 is what we could increase and meet that target of roughly 2% bottom line impact. So that was the target. The proposed budget would increase expenses by about $367,000. I want to be clear, there are some unknowns in the budget that you have in front of you. Obviously, the Pawtucket budget is a big variable, and you've seen that in the newspaper. The numbers that you have in front of you is their official published budget. They do have a public hearing tomorrow night, or I believe they had the hearing last week, and the committee will vote. The school committee has given some policy direction to approve a reduced level budget, which would affect us, would reduce our costs. But until they officially vote that tomorrow night, you know, we're going with the conservative numbers. Second pretty big variable is the police union contract. It's a bargaining year, so we've carried certain assumptions in the budget, not necessarily where they're going to end up. Third item is capital stabilization. The capital improvement committee process is ongoing, although they did meet last Thursday, and I do think that I know that the transfer into stabilization that we're proposing this year matches their recommendations. So they're not.
It's already in this budget?
It's in the budget plus the additional article for the Middle Street Bridge.
So do
$500,000
they
in the
want
budget.
to go for the bridge money also? Or?
Correct. So $500,000 in the budget plus $300,000 as an article.
For the article for the bridge?
Right.
Right.
And then finally, this free cash transfer, will that happen? If so, in what amount? That's a big policy discussion. I know the FinCom is going to be interested in setting up a dedicated discussion with the board just on that topic. It's a big topic. And then finally, that last bullet adds to school stabilization. The whole idea of school stabilization was that the amount is already in the tax bill. All right, here we go. You do have the slides in front. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so.
Not looking as good as it used to.
Right. So the whole idea of the school stabilization fund is that this amount of money is already embedded in the tax rate because it's been debt service that the town's been carrying for a long time. And as the debt expires, we continue to raise and appropriate that fund and put it into the school stabilization. So with that said, that means that proposed transfer into stabilization of $328,600 for next year is raise and appropriate money. It's not free cash transfer. So that means in terms of estimating the taxpayer impact, we have to include that because that's still coming out of the tax, the tax bill for next year.
But we're not increasing it, it's already there.
It's already there, so it shouldn't be, that's not going to add to the increment. in terms of
It's
the.
not going to decrease it because the debt had.
Right, and the point is, and I'll just go to the next slide, because, basically, if you don't factor in that transfer, it would look at, at first glance that, oh, well, just, that, yeah, that, 509 was the target, 367 is the actual increase, net of the school. So it would say, oh, we're great, we're well below where we wanted to be. But then you add in that 328, because that's part of what the taxpayer's funding with FY21 dollars. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay.
Because we,
It's, so,
but the 328 is already in there. But
No,
But it's
no,
not in
he
the operating
hasn't put
budget.
it, it's not
It's
in
through
as
an
a
article.
line item.
So that 328 is not retiring debt. That's what we use.
No,
Yes, it is.
It
That's
is.
like, that's
Yep.
like the same number we had last year.
Yep. Yeah, so it won't be an additional, it won't be something people feel above the current year tax bill. The issue is just, yeah, it's an accounting thing. You gotta add it to the bottom line because it's part of that raise and appropriate number, that when we do the tax rate recap in the fall to DOR, and that's what sets the tax rate, that 328.6 is on top of the omnibus budget, is part of what we need to raise from the taxpayer. So even though it,
But
yeah.
we're already raising that from the taxpayer.
yeah, but because it's not, like,
Okay.
it's.
We
not-
don't
yeah.
have to do it, but we do.
Right,
That
well,
makes
the other
sense,
way
yeah.
to do it would be to
We
put
have
that,
the ability to do it, but we don't have to if we don't want to.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in terms of budgeting for it, you may remember my first draft
Also,
budget.
The ability means we have the ability to do it, and we don't have to do it, but in future years, we could do it again and not have to do the 2.5% override.
That's right. But in terms of where you carry it in the budget, last year, my first draft budget actually included that 320 some odd thousand in the actual omnibus budget. And then the decision was made to instead do a warrant article. But to me, that having it in the budget was kind of an easy way to make sure we don't forget that that's still a raise and appropriate number. So it's an accounting issue, so I don't want to make too much of it. The point is, we can't overlook it. So with next year, basically you got both a cost and a benefit to the school stabilization. The cost, of course, is that you need to keep putting funds into this for the model to work. So that's the expiring debt of the 328.6. That is being proposed to go into that fund for next year. That's from raise and appropriate. It's not a free cash transfer. Therefore, it has to be added to the bottom line analysis of tax impact. The benefit, of course, is that in FY21, that'll be the first year that will incur debt service, and therefore the selectmen have supported an article to transfer money from that fund to offset the taxpayer impact. So what we saw earlier of an estimated $650,000 taxpayer impact, the net is going to be more like $400,000 because there's about $248 that's going to go into, from stabilization to offset
And
what you don't
next
do.
year, it'll be about double that.
Yeah, about double that,
We're
that's
only
right.
using half of 1 year's worth of it this year.
Right, because we're only paying about half of the initial debt service. So this is this
Confusing.
kind of estimated taxpayer impact chart that you have on page 2. And it basically summarizes everything I just presented, so I don't want to belabor it. But basically, the takeaway of this is that when you add the increase, you take, net out the middle high school project, which is just a policy thing to not have that count toward the bottom line. Add back in the school stabilization. Your net proposed increase is about $696. That exceeds that 2% estimate of 509 by about $187,000. That means to hit that target of roughly 2% impact, you'd need to find about $187,000 in the overall budget to cut that from the proposed budget. Now, with
We
the
just added more tonight.
Yes, and that's exactly why I think you made that point earlier, because it's to get to that, you know, it's easy to say as a matter of policy, oh, 2%, but, you know, when you're aligning that with, but.
Okay, but if we transfer just so that everyone knows, so if we transfer the money from the school, the 240 from the school stabilization.
Well, but we're not counting the whole 650. We're not counting that toward that impact. So that reduces that impact from 650 to 400.
Okay.
But it's still, that's not counting toward the 2%. So,
Okay.
but with the school committee's direction from last week's meeting, that could end up being a big chunk of that 187.
Yes,
So,
a big chunk.
yeah, so that's a big variable. And in terms of any, you know, coverage of the budget, that's a big variable. So,
Everybody has to understand, this is the first go-around.
yeah.
Very preliminary.
Yeah, numbers change in the budget process. So, and then finally, it's really important to keep in mind that this current year tax rate benefited from a transfer of $400,000 from free cash. And as a result, the tax rate actually fell pretty significantly this year. What that means, though, is if that same amount of free cash isn't transferred next year, that effectively feels like a tax increase to the taxpayer, because instead of coming from free cash, it's got to come out of people's tax bill. So that's why this free cash discussion is so important, and I have a slide coming up in a couple of...
That's why you don't use free cash for your operating budget sometimes, they do this, because when the years you can't do it, you get hit.
It feels like a hit. It feels like a spike, yes. Just very briefly on capital, you can see this is a week old because it refers to their next meeting, which took place this past Thursday. They met Thursday. They called for the $500,000 transfer into stabilization. That's what you see in my proposed budget. There's a separate warrant article proposing an additional $300,000 transfer. The CIC did recommend that when they met last week. And that'll go forward as it does every year in parallel with the FinCom review of the operating budget. And they're reviewing both the three specific expenditures proposed for next year as well as the overall 10-year capital program. There's a stabilization balance of about $1.5 million. The Department of Revenue recommends about 15% of your operating budget, or about $2.5 million. I don't know how many towns actually achieve that. But that is in the policy that they recommend.
Ours are upside down, and then they propose an amount for our free cash, which we succeed, but then we're lower on the...
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Our free cash is significantly higher than what Mass DOR
So we're going
recommends.
to, the articles that have been proposed for capital spending this year are going to eat up most of that 500.
Yes.
So there's a net addition of not very much.
Over 300, but that's, if things go well with the bridge in terms of the timeline, that 300 would be spoken for in the following budget year in FY22.
Well, that's what I know. I
That's
wasn't
right.
even counting
Yeah,
that, but in
yeah.
terms of, we got a dump truck.
Yeah, no, we're
and other-
basically treading
other
water
stuff.
on-
We're
not increasing
We're
it
not
much.
gonna be able to bump up the 1.5 very much this
Yeah,
year.
but
No.
projecting out,
And that's zero.
looking at capital expenditures, projecting out 10 years, the 500,000, once we get past the thank you. Projecting out, once we get past the 2 years where we're putting in an additional 300,000 into stabilization each year for the bridge, based on what shows up on the 10-year capital expenditure list, it looks like we're going to have to go up from our, sort of as a base of $500,000 per year currently.
Yeah.
So we're not going to jump, this year it'll be $800,000, that's what's being proposed at least. And the next year it'll probably be $500,000, but the year after that it's not going to drop to 5 again. It's going to probably be more like, I think we agreed on 7, most likely.
Yeah,
Yes.
CIC recommended 800,000 this year, including the bridge.
Yeah.
Okay.
800,000 next year, including the bridge, which is, we've always expected the bridge would be 2 separate 300,000 payments. then 700,000 for a year, and then
And then six,
600,000, which
yeah.
would become like
Yeah.
the new normal.
Right.
With that said, some of those actual projects, some of the timing continues to be actively moving around. But I think it's fair to say that the baseline level of contribution to capital
Yeah,
is
yeah.
going
I
to be
mean,
recommended
it's
to be
all
higher.
based on projections, so obviously things can and no doubt will change, but, yeah.
Nothing's gonna get cheaper, but it might have a longer lifespan.
We hope.
So in the estimated fund balance, actually, this shows up pretty well on the screen. Basically, along the top, you've got the estimated balances as of the first of the year. In some cases, like with free cash, that's, well, it all takes into account what took place at the fall town meeting. So for instance, as of July 1st or June 30th, free cash was about 2.1 million. But when you back out what was authorized at this fall town meeting, that's where you get to those estimated balances along the top. So that,
Oh, okay, I didn't see the date, so that's not fiscal year.
Correct.
That's actually January.
yeah, and that's
Okay.
why, there's some, it's estimated because, they're talking about projects that are authorized but not expended, so if they come in under cost, that returns money, so
Right, but-
it's conservative.
But those have all been factored in?
Yes.
The maximum amount?
Exactly.
Okay.
Correct. So basically, this goes through, and I should say, these article numbers, these are not the article numbers, because this blends special and annual, when we break that apart into the two warrants. So the numbers are useful for conversation and reference, but they're not the actual article numbers
Right.
that will appear on the warrant. but-
Just one thing that jogged my mind on was, have we looked back at, say, FY 2018 and special articles? Is there any stuff that was not expended sitting around in those articles?
There will be some funds that will sunset at the end of this year, including, actually, I think the bicentennial was an article. That was an article. Yeah, there's over $90,000 of unexpended bicentennial funds, so that'll be a boost in our year-end free cash.
90,000.
90, yep, about 91, yep. Yeah, and I believe there are some other articles that had sunset dates that.
Because that's always been a slight problem, is that we forget about things 4 or 5 years ago, and, there's 15,000 just sitting there.
Yeah. Last winter, Lori and I did a lot of, she did a lot of the work to go through each one of those articles, understand the project, because most of these happened before she started and certainly before I started. So, making sure we had good files on what's the project, what's the status, talking with the department head who was in charge, and really trying to get a better
So we're not
handle
too
on-
bad.
No, I think we're much better than we
Okay.
were in terms of being able to project that. So basically, each of the, using quotes, articles, you've got the financial impact, whether that's a deduction in red numbers or an addition in black numbers, or in a couple of cases like from one place to another, from free cash into pension liability stabilization. This is all subject to what gets recommended by the Board of Selectmen in terms of what actually appears on the warrant. These are based on the number, the drafts that you have in front of you. So, but this is intended to give you a sense of if everything that's on the table now passed in the form that it's on the table now, this gives you kind of a bottom line estimate of where we would be at the end of all that. And so, it's intended to help you crystallize your thinking on kind of what we can and cannot afford. And then everything in shaded in pink is still up in the air. So, for instance,
Pipe State Parking.
yeah, Pipe State Parking Study, the snow and ice deficit, that's always, moves around. Whether we want to contribute to OPEB stabilization at what level. contribution to offset the tax rate, and then the soldiers and sailors debt. We do have some good assumptions on that, but I haven't, we haven't formally locked in a number, so. So in terms of the next steps, we had last week's FinCom meetings. We got meetings scheduled for the 10th and 12th. The FinCom they always reserve the right to add additional meeting dates. So far, the meetings, while the agendas have been pretty jam-packed, they haven't run unreasonably long, so we'll see how they go on the 10th and 12th. It won't surprise me if they added an additional meeting. They're reviewing each section of the budget, and that schedule's been posted and circulated, and they're also reviewing the proposed warrant articles. The format of the presentation of the FinCom is we start with the town manager proposed budget, but I also provide to the FinCom all of the backup, especially if there's a difference. If there's not a difference between what I'm recommending, or if it's kind of a treading water budget, I might not give all the backup, but certainly if there's any area of disagreement or something where a department head proposed X and I proposed something other than that, I give them that backup so they can see what the issues are. So right now we have the joint meeting with the Selectmen, Moderator, Town Council penciled in for March 23rd. That's not a hard date. That's something that was circulated back in December. If as we go forward, if we collectively think March 30th might be a little more breathing room, that's fine. It's not locked, it's not locked in as far as I'm concerned. And then what is a hard deadline is to post the town meeting warrants on or before Friday, April 10th. So there was one slide that didn't come up that I'm surprised didn't come up, and that makes me think I opened an older version of my presentation.
Can you multitask?
Yep.
Like, when do you want our, inputs on maybe some new initiatives or ideas and stuff like that?
I would welcome any input that you have. Yeah, there was one slide I added, which I'm not seeing here, and I don't know why, but I could pull it up. I would, obviously you just got this with your packets over, I think those went out on Friday, so I don't know that if you've been through it and you have questions or you have suggestions.
One initiative that I'm thinking, one initiative from the Conservation Commission, they wanted to add hours to the new individual and have a land agent.
Yes.
Has there been any, we've talked in prior years about job sharing and trying to utilize the employees that we have here. Was there any talk when that whole new position opened up with the retirement of Jay, we tried to look at to combine those with the Board of Health and the health agent. What about, instead of increasing hours, and that means taxes, what about having that position, that 5 hour a week with the Board of Health? And Board of Health working with the Concom on that and trying to be able to utilize some more hours over there?
That is not something that I've looked at, but I think based on the way it's something I think
We've tried that in
we
the
certainly
past.
could look at. Yeah,
Would
that's
you mind
no.
reaching out and seeing maybe, or they have some money there.
That is correct.
I would actually like to see if,
Glenn, define, who has money?
I stopped, yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I stopped, I started looking at this, just flashing lights make me, get off subject, but, the reason why I asked the library today too about that like new position. So I don't like creep. So you know we hire a new health agent. Definitely only going to be X amount of hours. Conservation commission person only going to be X amount of hours. So the next year is 5. You know we had a fight for those. Now it's 5 hours. Now it's going to. I think it's starting to creep. So they have, what's it called, that fund they have?
The Wetlands Protection Fund.
They have the Wetlands Protection Fund, that is a lump of money that has, how much in it?
A little over 90,000, Stephanie.
$90,000 that
Yep.
they can spend, which we've used for personnel before for that.
Is that an annual?
No, it's built up over
Yeah,
many
yeah,
years.
okay.
And it's just a fund that sits there. And they-
Yeah,
they
where,
have
where'd that money
discretion.
come from?
From like the developers having a.
It's actually, we've been doing some research on that because we've had the same question, Rick, and some of it's come from fees and applications over time, but there have also been additions made by town meeting over time. It's been capitalized over the years.
Okay.
Because there's also a conservation trust, which we're not referring
Okay.
to. That actually requires a town meeting vote to expend, but that's about 47,000.
But that-
And then
that's-
there's the wetlands.
But that's not going to
protection
replenish
fund.
substantially from, I mean, it's great that it's,
Yeah.
if we can make, take advantage of it, but that's not going to replenish due to fees or anything like that at any significant rate.
Not at any
Yeah,
significant
okay.
rate.
So they're only talking about 5 hours a week.
Yeah.
So I would like, actually, just on this particular thing, like to explore if we could have the health agent do this job. Because I think with some analysis last year that we have some flexibility in that department without adding hours to the total building. And for some strange reason, if that doesn't fly, I would not try to make these 5 hours a permanent thing, but use it as a pilot program and use those funds from that account to offset that program. So we get and then have maybe the Concom person come back to us and maybe quarterly and say, hey, listen, this was a land trust person to work on the trails and stuff, and kind of give us exactly what it's going to be, and what those 5 hours are spent, and use it as a pilot program, and then make a decision next year to put it in our operating budget if that's the case, or and the same goes with and keep it in the Board of Health aspect of it, and have him report back to us exactly what's going on.
I thought, for some reason, I had thought that we had talked about that 5 hours and had, because initially there was some thought that it wasn't needed at all, and then we had talked about it and I thought had arrived at something more along the lines of 2 hours as a starting point.
That's what
But-
is built into the proposed budget that
Yeah.
you have in front of you. I think what
Yeah,
Len's suggesting is something that's,
I missed that one meeting in the hospital.
Okay, maybe, okay.
Well, in any
Yeah,
case,
yeah.
in any case, the principle still applies.
Yeah, yeah,
If it's 2 hours, or if it's 5 hours,
Yeah.
if it's 1 hour, I would still like to be able to then use the Board of Health to offset that, or use that money and call it a pilot program, and then come back maybe quarterly and see what's going on and what we're getting for that money, and then at the end of the year, then you can have some real
Yeah.
decision-making.
I think, Glenn, with the new conservation agent having taken a second position, we didn't think it was feasible if we were gonna use that person to have them also do another 5 hours here, but maybe they could come up with 2 hours. So we dropped it down.
Well, remember,
Yeah.
I think we have a department in the Board of Health that might be able to absorb 5 hours. And show, one thing I would love, if nothing else, to show that we can work within departments sometimes. And it seems like, I understand we get pushback on that, but, we can always just, have a proposal. All the departments shouldn't be working in a vacuum, we should try to be working together. So, that would be my thing. My first glance at it, and
How much,
So if I could, this is a slide that that was, it was an earlier draft, everything else was the same, but this, so this whole free cash transfer to reduce the bottom line tax rate is a really important issue in terms of estimating that bottom line impact to the taxpayer. In the past few years, past 4 years, there's been a trend toward increasing free cash transfers. DOR recommends maintaining about 5% of your operating budget as free cash. That's about $785,000. As I said earlier, the year-end balance in FY19 was $2.1 million, and even when you take into account all the proposed warrant articles, granted, we haven't put in snow and ice yet, and
no, but that was my question.
But basically,
what's that gonna be?
1 million. Just over 1 million. So you take out free cash, or I'm sorry, you take out snow and ice, if the Pipe State parking study was to be funded, and there's one or two others, but still there's some clearance above that 785.
yeah, but that's really.
Yeah, you don't want to cut it.
Hold on, but
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you're disingenuous, but yeah, at the end of the fiscal year, we're that way. But then everything zeroes out at the fiscal year, that 90 grand, and then by the
Yeah,
time.
no, right, then it
by the
bumps
time
up
it's
again.
all-
that's
No,
why I
you're
think
right.
it's a good-
Yeah.
I think it's-
in
Yes.
October,
No, you're right, you're right.
It's up to, 1.9 million.
1.8.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's why, but that's why I think it's not such a bad idea to deal with it in the fall.
I don't think it is either,
Then we can, then
You
we.
mean the tax?
because then you
Then you
know,
have a real number.
Then we
then you have a real
number.
number. And I agree with that.
To do a transfer to reduce the tax rate again in the
Right.
fall.
Right, so
It's possible that it
You can
might.
even do
it
more.
might- Well, yeah, but it's also possible that it might be bad, and we don't have any, but we don't commit ourselves,
I would agree with
we
that.
don't commit ourselves until the fall when we actually know, or approximately know, we have it may not be certified by the DOR at that
But
point,
you
but
have
it's
a good-
pretty close,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's, so I've said fall may be a better time to consider the free cash transfer after 20 is closed and you have a real number.
So why can't we
But,
why don't we just make that, why don't
well,
we do that?
Two things. I did want to put it on the table this budget season, just to be very explicit during the budget process, that the tax rate, the current year tax rate, benefits from that free cash transfer. So if there isn't one, let's say you were to say to me tonight or next week or next month, we're not going to transfer, which I don't think you're going to do. But if you did, I would say, okay, I need to find 400,000 in order to deliver your 2% tax impact. So that's where I wanted to be very clear during this season.
Oh, okay,
That
okay.
that bottom line 2% estimate, this factors right into it.
I'll have to do the number. What's 400,000 out of 15 million is, it's about 1%, right?
More.
400,000, so 1% of
It's
50
right.
million would be 150,000.
Right, so it's
400,000
almost,
is
it's
2.6
almost
Oh, it's almost
4%.
2.67%.
Okay.
4.3%, something like that.
400,000 out of
Out of
15 million, 2.67%.
Okay. Out of-
Yeah, 150,000 is going to be 1%.
Right.
So 2.67 times
Right.
100.
Yeah,
Totally,
okay,
yeah.
okay, yep.
Okay?
So, yeah, so that's, so I just,
No, that's.
yeah.
It's a big understanding.
Right, and I didn't want to get through the whole budget season, everyone's like, oh, great, we're at 2%, and then next fall say, oh, to deliver that 2%, you got to deliver this much free cash. So whether we appropriate it this spring or not, and I think there's plenty of reasons not to,
Okay.
we need to at least be estimating what level of transfer will be needed to deliver that, the policy goal of roughly 2%. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
good, thank you.
That was good.
Yeah, it was good, easy to follow.
Yeah, I was just gonna say understandable. Okay, Mr. Chairman, let's move along.
Okay.
Starting to fall asleep. It's hot in here too, isn't it? I don't know, I found it tough. I'll shut them off.
Okay, articles,
We're just talking about it. Are we gonna talk about the article separately, or what you did on that slide?
I guess what I'd suggest here is that, and we don't need to do it tonight, but if there's specific articles you want to have the proponents in front of the board, let me know.
When do you want us to know? By the next meeting?
If you let me know in the next couple of days, then I can sit.
okay, the only one
lined up for the next meeting. I'd like them coming in the 16th.
we definitely have to talk about, thumbs up or thumbs down on whether we're gonna have this, pipe stave
That is gonna be on the next agenda. anyway,
review.
So,
Let's have it on the next agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Any other ones that are sticking
Not
in
that I
your
know.
craw?
I gotta look, not
Yeah.
sticking in my craw, but I gotta look. Well, that's, that has to be, we
Yeah.
have to, we need to do that early. Pull
Yeah.
it early or commit.
right, I totally agree.
Angus, do we have any idea what, I know I kept saying 10, and you said we're not gonna get
You're not gonna get much
anything
for
good
10.
for 10.
Yeah.
So have you talked to anybody? Do we know what 10, what do we need?
I will,
Why don't you have that for next week?
Yeah.
So we can make it
Yeah.
part of the whole discussion.
good, yep.
Review for proposed 29, FY21 revision to the animal control officer.
That's not one you have to deal with tonight.
But I read the whole thing, and I'm good with it. yeah.
Okay.
Make a
Good.
motion to, what do we need, to enter?
Approve well, the only question is, they wanted to do 3.
That is the question, is do you want
They
to
want to
accept
do 3 years.
FY21, A, and B, do you want to do a 3-year or
It
keep
seems like,
it just?
seems
an
like we're
annual
doing it every year. Why don't we just do 3 so you don't have to deal with this next year?
thing? I wouldn't object to that, if you think that, yeah.
I haven't have you,
They've been doing a good job,
yeah, have you had,
No,
since you've been here,
it's-
I've never had a complaint.
It's been going great.
So why don't we just do 3 years? And if we have to address it because of something, then we'll address it midstream, but get it, we seem to be doing this more than.
It seems like we're always approving this, or, yeah, I know.
Well, yeah, I was just kind of looking at their numbers, trying to understand, their rate of increase with their numbers, and obviously that's their
So
financial, but
basically,
we don't know
I-
everything going on in their
Yeah, I know,
finances.
but I have to say that they're charging us approximately 30% of the overall cost of their operating the animal control. So we're not paying half of their budget, we're not paying 10% of their budget, that we're paying about a third of it. So, but I think we're getting enough out of it, yeah. It hasn't, when you consider what we were paying before,
Yeah.
I remember somehow years ago that the animal control budget was in the 20s, so,
Oh, yes.
so we haven't,
One question I have about it.
so it hasn't gone up much in 10 years, so I have no problem with it.
One question unrelated to this, but I see that animal control van still, the old one, still in the back lot. Is there a reason for that? The minivan?
Is it really?
The old one?
Unaware.
And you did tell everybody to pack in the back, pack them up tomorrow, right, for the election?
Yes. That Mike did.
I'm just, I'm thinking of the back lot. No, right, back where they have that book thing and they have all the trailers. The old minivan, animal control minivan is sitting there. I thought we got rid of that.
I'll look into it.
Okay,
I hadn't noticed that.
There's probably some,
it's there. It was there today.
It was animals living in it.
There's a couple of cages.
it's those raccoons on the Geico commercial are driving it around.
Okay, so make a motion that we propose FY 21 revisions to the animal control officers agreement with Newbury, but I'd like to approve it, and approve it for 2 additional years for FY 22 and 23.
Second. Discussion? You good, Rick?
I'm good.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Review and approve the investment policy statement.
So we didn't actually get that from the committee. At the
Oh.
time we posted the agenda, we expected to, but I reached out to the chair a couple of different ways, and I didn't I didn't get anything.
That's weird, because we voted to approve it the other day, and we didn't really make any changes, so.
So can we put it on our next agenda?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Wait, what are you talking about now?
The investment policy?
Oh, right, okay.
So
Yeah.
what kind of
So,
items
yeah.
we can put
Yeah,
stuff
okay.
in and all that,
Right.
yeah.
And
The-
the community grant.
I forgot I sat in on one of those meetings.
Request for authorization to apply for a green communities grant, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I'm gonna let Rick talk about that.
Yeah, so, you know, we're familiar with the Green Communities Grant Program from previous years, and in this year's competitive grant program, there's a provision for grants for hybrid vehicles replacing what are referred to as exempt vehicles in the Green Communities Program. The exempt vehicles are the ones that don't need to meet a mileage standard. So if you can take what was an exempt vehicle and replace it with a hybrid vehicle, which is going to, hybrid or all-electric or a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, you're eligible for a grant. Well, there's now a vehicle, actually I can show you what it looks like. There's a variation on the Ford Fusion sedan, which Chief is very accepting of, and it's a pursuit-rated vehicle. You know, it's a police pursuit-rated vehicle, hybrid, gets much better fuel mileage, goes fast, you know, safety rated, all that kind of stuff. And it's much less expensive than going with an SUV, and a $5,000 grant availability.
I'm ignorant on this, so I don't know. My mother has a Prius, and I don't know. Do you get the same amount of fuel savings and value when it's idling as when it's driving?
Dramatically better.
Because you're doing.
Well, so with a with a norm.
Unless they always say that their police vehicles, they only have whatever 40,000 miles, but they have 172 items.
Right. Okay. So here's one significant advantage of using a hybrid vehicle in this case is that the hybrid vehicle engine shuts off when it doesn't need to be on, and the car runs off the batteries. So estimates I've heard are between 80% and 90% less, or I'll call it 80 to 90% less idling of the engine with a hybrid vehicle than with a normal internal combustion engine vehicle, because most of the time when you're sitting there, the engine won't actually be running. It'll just be running off the battery, and you know, all the systems, the electronics, everything on the car will be running off the battery. And then when the battery depletes to a certain amount, then the engine comes on and it tops off the battery, and then it cycles back down again. So you reduce by, you know, conservatively, I'll say 80%.
So you don't have to be literally driving to have the thing charged.
Correct.
It's not
Yeah.
charging, it's just draining the battery, but
But then it will recharge, and the engine comes.
Yeah,
Right,
then the
right.
engine will come on and will charge the battery
Right.
back up.
So do you think the police, do you have any other functions in town?
Well, at this point in time, I don't think so, but they'll be, you know, as new vehicles are needed in town, I mean, there isn't that wide a selection of, you know, relevant or appropriate hybrid vehicles yet for the types of things that this town uses vehicles for. We don't have much in the way of light-duty vehicles.
We don't have a lot of people driving around.
Right, exactly. But there will be, like, you know, Ford's developing an F-150 hybrid, or actually it's an all-electric F-150. And I would say within probably less than, you know, maybe next year, if not next year, then the year after, that'll be on the market. And then there will be a vehicle, you know, within less than 5 years that's appropriate for uses here in town for some of our lighter duty vehicles, and eventually there'll be like an F-250.
So you're proposing that we apply for this grant to be able to use the $5,000 to buy a vehicle like this for the police department?
Yeah, and I think, you know, so the pattern has been that there's been purchase of a new vehicle for the police department each year. So Jeff Duran's thoughts are to retire the oldest I think it's a 2017 model year SUV. The vehicle that he currently drives will then become a patrol vehicle, because he's currently driving one of the SUVs, and then this would become the new chief's vehicle. The hybrid would become the new chief's vehicle, because he doesn't need the same capacity that the normal patrol vehicles do.
So he must be pretty secure with himself as a chief to be able to drive around in a hybrid.
Yeah, no, but I actually there's more background humor there regarding past chief, but I didn't say that. Yeah, he seems pretty interested in it. So, and to put it in perspective, so I think the net cost for this vehicle, including, lights and everything, with a grant is going to be under $30,000. And the cost now to get one of the new Ford SUVs, including outfitting it completely, is mid-50s.
So,
Because
does the grant have anything to do with outfitting it too, or no? Or is it you just
No,
$5,000
well, it's,
and you pay to use it for whatever? 'Cause he doesn't outfit it, remember?
yeah, he has somebody else do that.
No, he drives a unmarked car. So it would be the cost would be substantially less.
Okay, I thought he said that he had,
He has a black one, the same exact
Yeah.
SUV as the patrol cars, but it's not.
Does it have any lights like built into?
yeah, I think they're lights that you can't
They
see.
don't have the
Yeah.
bar, they don't
Right,
have
right.
They don't have the bar, but they
Right.
have the lights in the
Yeah,
grill.
yeah. So,
Okay, so I move to approve that we apply for the grant.
Second. All in favor?
aye. Great.
Remember we talked
But-
about this
but it-
10 years ago?
Yeah, no, it's been a long
And everybody
conversation.
laughed at you, said we'll
Right.
never use it.
Right.
It does come with the little vase in the front.
A little what?
The little vase.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of February 18th, 2020, February 3rd, 2020, and this lonely one that's been sitting around October 22nd, 2018.
That was a good,
Well, I can't vote on the 2018.
that was a good year.
Okay, so
No, it wasn't.
why don't we do the February ones? Want to second that one?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of October 22nd, 2018. Do you mind, without too much explanation, it's like, why? It's so late. You just found them?
Yeah, it was a gap when, going back to former staff and,
Yeah. You just, good.
Second,
got it done.
All in favor?
Aye. so 201 on that last one.
One abstention. Do we really need any of this update, or are we all good with them?
It's informational, I think the materials speak for themselves, it's Harbor Committee.
Anything that you want to make
Well,
sure the
just
press
a-
knows?
Meeting coming up Wednesday evening with the Harbor Committee, they're really digging their teeth into some issues.
Yeah, I heard the mooring field type of thing?
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of a feasibility study.
Anything on future agendas? Didn't you have something?
I forgot.
So in a mooring field, is that something that?
We want to find out, where do we stand on the Housing Authority
Yes.
grant? Is that thing
We
gonna
have
happen?
an update, not a
Yeah.
formal one, but just maybe something that you could give it up to speed on our
Because
next-
that's a huge amount of money for
Yeah.
the CPC that might not get spent.
Yeah, and I meant to say this when you talked about the CIC article for the bridge. Again, you don't have to go into it tonight. Is there any new news? Anything happening?
Well,
Okay, why don't we put
No,
that
that's
on
a
our
good, no, but that's a,
I know, but why don't we put that on our next meeting then? That well seemed like it was gonna be much too long for me. And everybody else. Is it a
make a
good well
motion.
or a bad well?
I don't want to sign the grant until we have the agreement with Newburyport. I mean, we're the same place we've been.
Are we gonna lose out on that grant?
No. I was in touch with the grant office last week. I'm keeping them.
What's holding them?
It needs to go through city council approval. The mayor can't sign it under own authority.
So can we go to their next city council
I've
meeting?
asked them that.
And what did they say?
Honestly, I think they've been busy with some other stuff, so, I gotta check.
Lots of marijuana stuff.
Was it the end of the fiscal year, is
You
that
know,
what?
we have too, I mean,
Is it worth calling a city council person I know and asking, hey?
Let me find out where it is
Which
in
one
the
do you know?
process.
Okay.
I'll let you know about that.
Okay.
I actually had a question about the mooring field. Is that something, would the town likely charge a fee for a mooring site?
We
or-
already do.
Oh, we do
We
already,
have
okay.
we have a,
Well, it's a very modest fee, but yeah,
Yeah,
evaluating
yeah.
the fee structure would
Yeah.
definitely be part of that.
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
at that.
we have a mooring fee in field and dock fees, so people do get charged
Yeah.
for their docks and
Yeah,
moorings.
yeah.
And the harbor master used to collect those fees and all so forth and so on, and then it comes to your office now.
We're way better than we were.
Yeah,
It was like
nobody.
nobody was paying for a while,
And
yeah.
you can have one as long as you don't even have to live in West Newbury. As long as you have water access, and you don't even have to live to have water access, as long as you can prove you have water access. So if you have a boat, or you have like with Davy Jones Marina on the other side of the Merrimack, a lot of people have agreements with them, and then their boat can go in and out there, and they have right at the bend of the river, beautiful spot. Right where the, what's his name has his Airbnb, that floating Airbnb, you ever see that?
Yeah, yeah.
He got mad at us, so then he put that thing out there.
Okay, all in favor of
Aye.
adjournment? Aye.